Chapter 420. 5 days later, Duan Yang told Mu Yu that the arrangements for his field trip had been made. The person in charge of leading the team was named Ma Mingxuan. He was an experienced Zhongtian array master with an out-of-body cultivation. The array faction's array masters didn't care about cultivation, only their understanding of array formations. Thus, even though Ma Mingxuan was an out-of-body array master, he was only a Zhongtian array master. Ma Mingxuan, an out-of-body Zhongtian array master? Mu Yu rubbed his chin. He hadn't expected Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai to send an out-of-body Zhongtian array master to deal with him. This was going to be troublesome. Array masters were the strongest in a short period of time among cultivators of the same level. They were much more powerful than ordinary cultivators. If one wanted to deal with an array master, they would usually choose to fight a protracted battle. They would try their best to stall for time until the spirit energy in the array master's array foundation was depleted. However, array master's attacks were swift and decisive. They wouldn't give you the chance to stall for time. Every array master knew their own shortcomings, so they wouldn't linger for too long. Mu Yu was only a beginner in the art of array formations. His control of array formations was far inferior to Ma Mingxuan's. If the two of them fought, Mu Yu would most likely be at a disadvantage. Feng Mu, I've heard a lot about you. Ma Mingxuan nodded politely at Mu Yu. Zhongtian array masters didn't need to be polite to Zhongtian disciples. After all, they had passed the test to become Zhongtian array masters. They were much more skilled in array formations than Zhongtian disciples. However, Mu Yu was already a quasi-Shantian disciple. In a sense, he was superior to Master Zhongtian. Greetings, Master Ma. Mu Yu nodded and returned the greeting. At the same time, he began to size up Ma Mingxuan. Ma Mingxuan had a friendly face. He looked to be in his 40s and was wearing Zhongtian array master robes. His cultivation was around the third layer of the out-of-body stage. Mu Yu had always thought that the talisman sex spies had the highest cultivation levels. Among them were Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai. He hadn't expected Ma Mingxuan to be hiding among them. It seemed like the talisman sect had been coveting the talisman sect for a long time. Even the spies they sent were extraordinary. This time, we're going to the Southern Star Taoist Temple to help set up a mountain protection array. The mountain protection array is the most basic array formation. The three of you will set it up, and I'll be in charge of guiding you, Ma Zhongshi said to the other two Zhongtian disciples. Yes. The two Zhongtian disciples were named Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing. Both of them were Zhongtian disciples who followed Mu Yu. They obeyed Mu Yu's every word. However, Mu Yu did not trust them. Most of the people who followed him were spies of the Seal sect. It was just that Mu Yu was unable to identify them. Since this trip was arranged by Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai, it went without saying that the three people traveling with Mu Yu would most likely secretly make a move against him. Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing were only in the 9th heaven of the Jindan period. They were only about 15 years old and had joined the sect for less than 5 years. Regardless of whether it was Gu Fei, Jing Yuqing or Ma Mingxuan, each of their cultivations was stronger than Mu Yu, who had just entered the Jindan period. Perhaps in the eyes of Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai, Mu Yu would not be able to escape death this time. They would never have thought that the person they were going to deal with would be the disciple of real God Lu of the third heaven. The Southern Star Taoist Temple was an inconspicuous sect. It was not big and only had about 100 people. The temple master was a white-haired old man who called himself Taoist Nan Xing. He looked to be in his 70s or 80s, but his cultivation was not high. He was only in the 9th heaven of the nascent soul stage. When he faced Ma Mingxuan, who was in the out-of-body stage, he was very fearful. Obviously, he did not expect a secondary master who was even stronger than him to set up a mountain protection array for them. Greetings, Master Secondary Master. I did not know that Master Secondary Master had come personally. Please forgive me for not welcoming you." The Southern Star Taoist Temple Master bowed. Although the Array sect was not as good as the 8 sects, it was still a big sect. A small temple master like him could not afford to offend it. Other things aside, Ma Mingxuan's out-of-body stage cultivation was enough to make him respect him. "You are welcome, Southern Star Taoist Temple Master." Although Ma Mingxuan was younger than the Southern Star Taoist Temple Master, he was much more talented. In the cultivation world, only strength mattered, not age. Therefore, Ma Mingxuan spoke with the dignity of an out-of-body stage cultivator. The third heaven continent was so big. Other than the big sects, there were thousands of small sections. Most of the small sects were not presentable. Cultivators like Taoist Nanxing, who were in the nascent soul stage, could be found everywhere. Most of these cultivators occupied a mountain and started their own sections. They focused on cultivation and did not fight with others. Taoist Nanxing had been wandering outside his whole life. When he was old, he found this mountain and built the Southern Star Taoist Temple 30 years ago. The disciples in the temple were not very talented. Most of these disciples were from poor families nearby. They could not enter the big sects to cultivate, but they wanted to pursue the immortal Tao. Therefore, they joined the Southern Star Taoist Temple. Mu Yu recalled the time when he was in the Moyun mountain range. A person in the Jindan period could become the leader of a sect. This Southern Star Taoist Temple Master's 9th heaven nascent soul stage cultivation was considered good. However, the place he lived in was the 3rd heaven continent and not a remote place like the Moyun mountain range. Therefore, his 9th heaven nascent soul stage cultivation was not presentable. The protective mountain array was the foundation of a mountain sect. When the sect was first established, Taoist Nanxing had asked people from the array sect to help set up the protective mountain array. However, the person who helped set up the protective mountain array was an ordinary postnatal array master. His cultivation was lower than Taoist Nanxing's. Therefore, the Southern Star Taoist Temple Master was a little surprised when he saw Ma Mingxuan, who was in the out-of-body stage. According to the previous situation, this kind of small sex business was indeed handled by postnatal array masters. The array sect would not send postnatal array masters to handle the small sex business. However, recently, the Talisman Grandmaster had increased the snatching of the array sex business. Many large and medium-sized sex business had been snatched away. Therefore, the array sect now attached great importance to the small sex business and would occasionally send postnatal array masters. On the one hand, it was to ensure that nothing went wrong. On the other hand, for small sects like the Southern Star Taoist Temple Master's cultivation, sending an out-of-body stage postnatal array master was also a deterrent. At the same time, it would leave a good impression on the Southern Star Taoist Temple Master that the array sect valued. "Master Postnatal Array Master, please come in." The Southern Star Taoist Temple Master respectfully welcomed Ma Mingxuan and the others into the Taoist temple. He did not dare to neglect them. This Taoist temple was not big, but it looked simple and fresh. Hidden in the woods, it was also a good place to hide. However, Mu Yu found that many of the buildings in the Taoist temple were severely damaged. It seemed that they had been destroyed by force. Disciples of the Taoist temple could be seen everywhere cleaning up the broken bricks and tiles. Along the way, the disciples of the Taoist temple were very low in cultivation. Most of them were only in the foundation establishment stage. The disciples of the Jindan period were very old. Therefore, when they saw that their respected Southern Star Taoist Temple Master was so respectful to a 30-year-old cultivator, many disciples of the Southern Star Taoist Temple understood that this was a big shot and stopped to salute him. "Southern Star Taoist Temple Master, according to the information you provided us, you asked the people of the array sect to set up a protective array 8 years ago. This array is strong enough to resist the attack of the nascent soul stage. Why is it damaged now? Does your sect have enmity with others? Otherwise, how could the whole mountain gate be so badly damaged? Ma Mingxuan also noticed the abnormality in the Southern Star Taoist temple. The Southern Star Taoist temple master sighed and said, "To tell you the truth, our Southern Star Taoist temple has always been in conflict with the Yunhe sect. A while ago, when I was out on business, I had a conflict with He Tianqiang, the head of the Yunhe sect, and I took advantage of him. Just 3 days ago, He Tianqiang suddenly came to us. His cultivation was about the same as mine, but that day, he got a 5th-level elixir, the Yuan Qi Gathering elixir, from somewhere. His cultivation soared to the out-of-body stage in an instant, and then he destroyed our entire protective array." Mu Yu blinked. Yuan Qi Gathering elixir? He still had a lot of it. The Yuan Qi Gathering elixir was a 5th-level elixir, which was specially given to people in the nascent soul stage. It could allow them to exert the strength of out-of-body stage for a quarter of an hour. Of course, the consequence was that they would vomit and have diarrhea a day later. There were too many sequelae. However, this elixir was very expensive. After all, it was a 5th-level elixir. One elixir was equivalent to the price of a protective array. Generally, nascent soul stage cultivators bought it to save their lives. However, He Tianqiang used it to vent his anger. "He just destroyed your mountain gate? Didn't he do anything else?" Mu Yu couldn't help but ask. The dean of the Southern Star Monastery looked at Mu Yu and found that Mu Yu's cultivation was only in the Jindan stage. Although he still didn't dare to neglect the people of the Array faction, his tone was less respectful than when he was with Ma Mingxuan. Instead, he changed into the tone of an elder and said, "Nephew, you don't know that the Yuan Qi Gathering elixir has sequelae, and the effect is only for a quarter of an hour. It is said that the Array faction's array is unparalleled in the world. I have seen it. Although the protective array couldn't resist out-of-body stage cultivators, it lasted for a quarter of an hour before it was destroyed. If it weren't for the effect of this quarter of an hour, I'm afraid I would have been killed by He Tianqiang." The Taoist of the Southern Star Monastery still had lingering fear when he recalled the scene that day. He shook his head helplessly and continued, "I was worried that He Tianqiang would make a comeback, so I quickly invited your sect to come and set up the array again. Without the protective array these 3 days, I was also on tenterhooks. I was worried that He Tianqiang would bring people to kill us. If he still has another Yuan Qi Gathering elixir, then I'm afraid my Taoist temple would be destroyed in a quarter of an hour. If He Tianqiang, who was in the 9th heaven of nascent soul stage, took another Yuan Qi Gathering elixir, his cultivation would soar to out-of-body stage. He could definitely kill all the people of the Southern Star Taoist temple in a quarter of an hour, including the old man in front of him. Therefore, the dean of the Southern Star Monastery had been waiting for the array masters of the Array faction to come and set up the array for the past 2 days. The Array faction had shops all over the 3 continents. They were usually managed by postnatal array masters. No matter if it was a sect or an individual who wanted to set up an array, they only needed to tell the Array faction's shops in the nearby cities about the requirements and location. After negotiating the price, the Array faction would send the appropriate array masters to deal with it according to the situation. Arrays of different power required different fees. For example, the dean of the Southern Star Monastery could only reluctantly pay 10,000 spirit stones to ask the Array faction to set up a protective array that could withstand the attack of a nascent soul stage cultivator. If he wanted the protective array to be more powerful, he would need to pay more. This was not something the dean of the Southern Star Monastery could afford. The dean of the Southern Star Monastery brought Mu Yu and the others to check on the damaged array foundation. The protective array would not consume too much spirit qi during normal times. It would only use the spirit qi of the array foundation to resist when it was attacked or invaded by foreign enemies. At this moment, the array foundation of the protective array of the Southern Star Taoist Temple had already been turned into a pile of waste stones. Mu Yu's attainment in array techniques was not what it used to be. He could tell at a glance that there was something wrong with the protective array. This protective array was built with the help of the Zhongtian array foundation and spirit stones. It was a relatively clumsy array. It was a little difficult for the protective array to be set up in this way to withstand the attack of a nascent soul stage cultivator, but it definitely could not withstand the attack of an out-of-body stage cultivator. However, He Tianxiang took 15 minutes to destroy it. Why was that? Wait, the attack on the Southern Star Taoist Temple happened 3 days ago? Mu Yu had decided to go on a fieldwork mission 5 days ago. The array faction had fieldwork missions every day. Why did they have to wait for 5 days? Unless someone deliberately created a fieldwork mission in these 5 days to ensure that nothing went wrong. I see. What a scheming person. Mu Yu understood many things in an instant. He sneered slightly. He already knew how Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai were going to deal with him. Chapter 421. 5 days ago, Mu Yu accepted Duan Yang's advice and decided to go on a field trip. 3 days ago, the protective mountain array of the Southern Star Taoist Temple was destroyed. This was not a coincidence. It was probably a conspiracy that Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai had created with the help of the Talisman sect. It was a piece of cake for an out-of-body stage cultivator to destroy a mountain guarding formation of this level in less than a quarter of an hour. However, He Tianxiang spent a quarter of an hour and only destroyed the buildings of the South Star Taoist Temple. He didn't hurt anyone in the temple. This didn't make sense. If He Tianxiang had a grudge with the Southern Star Taoist Temple's dean, he would definitely kill him for revenge. He would even massacre the entire Southern Star Taoist Temple instead of giving the Southern Star Taoist Temple a chance to ask the Talisman sect for help. Taoist Nanxing seemed to be very depressed, but Mu Yu suspected that he was in cahoots with the people from the Talisman sect. If he had received some benefits from the Talisman sect, it wouldn't be a problem for him to destroy the Grand Mountain Guarding Formation. Mu Yu was arranged to go on a field trip to the Southern Star Taoist Temple. If Mu Yu's guess was right, the Talisman sect was planning to use the conflict between the Yunhe sect and the Southern Star Taoist Temple to get rid of Mu Yu, a quasi-innate disciple. They would kill Mu Yu during the conflict between the Yunhe sect and the Southern Star Taoist Temple. Then, they would create an illusion that Mu Yu had died in the conflict between the two sections. If the Talisman sect wanted to investigate, they would only look for the Yunhe sect and the Southern Star Taoist Temple's dean. They would vent their anger on these two sects and would not blame the Talisman sect. What a good plan. Then how will they do it? Ma Mingxuan, are you going to wait for the two sects to fight, and then secretly make a move on me? Taoist Nanxing, what role will you play? Mu Yu stared at the backs of Ma Mingxuan and Taoist Nanxing as he pondered. He was not afraid of Ma Mingxuan. Instead, he was wondering if there were any innocent people involved in this scheme. He needed to verify if Taoist Nanxing was in cahoots with the people from Talisman sect. If he was, Mu Yu would kill him without hesitation. Since you've come from afar, why don't you take a rest at my humble abode? You can come back tomorrow to set up the formation. With you around, I don't have to worry about He Tianxiang daring to do anything. When the dean of the Southern Star Monastery saw Ma Mingxuan, who was in the out-of-body stage, he was very enthusiastic. Ma Mingxuan inspected the destroyed array base and pondered for a moment before he said, "Southern Star Monastery Master, according to the principles of our array faction, we have never participated in the disputes between other sections. Therefore, we are only responsible for setting up the array. Once a conflict arises between your sect and the Yunhe sect, we will not interfere. You have to remember this." "I know. Of course I won't. Of course I won't." A trace of awkwardness and disappointment flashed across the Southern Star Monastery's dean's face. Obviously, the other party knew what he was thinking, so he brought it up first. Ma Mingxuan's words were a warning to the Southern Star Monastery's abbot not to drag them down. What on earth is Ma Mingxuan planning? Isn't it the best time for you to attack me by intervening in the dispute between the two sects? Mu Yu vaguely felt that things were not so simple. Could it be that Ma Mingxuan was plotting other schemes? Looking at Taoist Nan Xing's disappointed expression, it did not seem to be an act. Could it be that Taoist Nan Xing was just an innocent victim? Your deal with our array faction is to make the same mountain shielding array. However, looking at your current situation, are you sure you don't want to set up a more advanced formation? Ma Mingxuan asked. In fact, the Southern Star Monastery master had this plan in mind, but he knew that the cost of a more advanced formation would naturally be higher. He asked, if I want to set up a formation that can resist the attack of an out-of-body stage cultivator, how many spirit stones do I need? 900,000, Ma Mingxuan said. 900,000! The Southern Star Monastery master almost shouted out. His face turned red and then white. How could a small sect like his take out 900,000 spirit stones? Originally, the mountain shielding array that could resist a nascent soul stage cultivator only needed 10,000 spirit stones. However, to resist an out-of-body stage cultivator, 900,000 spirit stones was 90 times the price. This was not Ma Mingxuan asking for a sky-high price. Resisting an out-of-body stage cultivator's attack and resisting an out-of-body stage cultivator's attack were two different concepts. Out-of-body stage cultivators were much more powerful than nascent soul stage cultivators. 900,000 spirit stones was not expensive. The most important thing was that at least 800,000 of the 900,000 spirit stones were used to set up the formation. The array faction only received 100,000 spirit stones as a service fee. The disciples and array masters who worked on the formation would only receive a few thousand spirit stones as a reward. The rest would be handed over to the sect and distributed by the sect. After all, the entire array faction was full of formations. Without spirit stones, it was impossible to maintain them. The array faction supported so many disciples, and every Zhongtian disciple would receive 100 spirit stones every month for free. These spirit stones came from the various businesses that the array faction sold. Since you are a regular customer, we can help you save 10,000 spirit stones, Ma Mingxuan said. The Southern Star Temple Master's face was ashen. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. To be honest, I can't even take out 200,000 spirit stones, let alone 900,000 spirit stones. The Southern Star Taoist Temple was not like those big sects that had a fixed income of spirit stones. It was equivalent to them surviving in the cracks. It would be good if they could earn 100,000 spirit stones a year. Besides, the mountain guarding formation was like a bottomless pit. It required a supply of spirit stones. Once the supply of spirit stones ran out, the mountain guarding formation would be useless. A mountain guarding formation that could resist out-of-body stage cultivators would consume 500,000 spirit stones every 2 years. That was to say, after 2 years, they would need to hire someone to maintain the formation. Adding on the various costs of damage, it would cost 600,000 spirit stones. 600,000 spirit stones in 2 years and 300,000 spirit stones in 1 year. The Southern Star Taoist Temple could not afford such a mountain guarding formation. Then we can't help you. Tomorrow, we will help you set up a formation that can resist an attack from a 9th heavenly layer nascent soul stage cultivator. The rest is up to you. Ma Mingxuan said. The formation sect was not a charity organization. They also relied on their own formation to support themselves. It was impossible for them to work for others for free. The Southern Star Taoist Temple Master nodded. There was no other way. He personally led Mu Yu and the others to the place where they stayed. Then, he ordered the disciples of the temple to serve them well and left. The 3 of you have a good rest tonight. We will leave after we finish setting up the formation tomorrow. Ma Mingxuan said. Yes. The Southern Star Taoist Temple Master did not neglect them. He left 4 rooms for them, 1 for each of them. This had been specially vacated because the other buildings had been damaged by He Tianqiang. Many disciples had to squeeze in the same room. It was very polite to let Mu Yu and the others have 1 room each. Mu Yu was lying on his bed. He was not asleep. Ma Mingxuan next door might be waiting for him to fall asleep before attacking him. He was ready to teach Ma Mingxuan a lesson when he showed his foxtail. Of course, he did not think that the Talisman sect only sent Ma Mingxuan to deal with him. There must be others. However, he had nothing to be afraid of. He had many means to protect himself. It was not certain who would die. Sure enough, in the middle of the night, there was a sudden commotion outside. Then, the whole house shook violently. Mu Yu turned over and stood up. He looked around vigilantly for any abnormal movement. At this moment, a cold voice exploded outside. It reverberated throughout the Southern Star Taoist Temple. Kill everyone in the Southern Star Taoist Temple. He Tianqiang, there are people from the Formation sect in my temple. How dare you? The Southern Star Taoist's angry voice resounded through the sky. Formation sect? What does it have to do with me? I only know that everyone in the Southern Star Taoist temple will die today. He Tianqiang said fiercely. How dare you destroy the Southern Star Taoist temple? You have to pay the price. The Southern Star Taoist roared. Then, the entire temple was filled with the sound of countless magic weapons fighting. Bang! The door of Mu Yu's room was slammed open. Ma Mingxuan's figure flashed in. He shouted, Feng Mu, let's get out of here. Mu Yu's figure floated towards Ma Mingxuan like a ghost. However, at this moment, a cold voice came from outside the house. Trying to escape? All of you, stay here obediently. A terrifying pressure rolled from outside the house to the house where Mu Yu was located. The roof tiles were suddenly shattered, and countless debris fell down, smashing into the people inside the house. However, these things could not do anything to Mu Yu. Mu Yu's hand had already reached for Ma Mingxuan's back. People from the Talisman sect, how dare you be so presumptuous here? Ma Mingxuan roared in shock and anger. Mu Yu forcibly withdrew his hand. He quickly retreated. He felt strange. Why would Ma Mingxuan say something like that? Gu Fei, Jing Yuqing, the 2 of you take Feng Mu and leave this place. You must send him back to the Formation sect safely. Ma Mingxuan's figure floated out as soon as he finished speaking. Wait. Ma Mingxuan was not a spy from the Talisman sect. Mu Yu was shocked. It turned out that he had guessed wrongly. Ma Mingxuan did not have any ill intentions towards him. On the contrary, he wanted to protect Mu Yu. After thinking about it carefully for a moment, he understood why the Talisman sect would send a spy to accompany him. Once something happened to Mu Yu and the people who traveled with Mu Yu returned safely, the sect would definitely vent their anger on the people who traveled with Mu Yu. How could the Talisman sect take such a risk? Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing were probably innocent as well. I almost hurt my own people. Mu Yu silently cursed his stupidity. However, Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing had already found Mu Yu's figure in the collapsed house. The 2 of them flashed to Mu Yu's side. Junior brother, be careful. Let's go. Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing were both at the 9th firmament of the Golden Core realm. They tried their best to protect Mu Yu behind them before they brought Mu Yu and flew into the distance. We are going to help Ma Zhongshe, Mu Yu said in a low voice. I know the person who is fighting with Ma Zhongshe. He is a Khanate disciple from the Talisman sect. He is at the out-of-body stage. We are no match for him. Gu Fei said anxiously. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Suddenly, 3 sharp sounds pierced through the air and shot towards Mu Yu and the other 2 at an extremely fast speed. Mu Yu could not see clearly what it was, but he had already unsheathed his shadow clone sword and split the sharp object in half. However, the two people beside him did not manage to dodge it. They were hit by the sharp object and fell to the ground. The two of you, are you all right? Muyu was shocked. He only cared about blocking the sharp object that was shooting towards him. He did not have time to help Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing who were beside him. The person who launched the attack in the dark had a high cultivation level. At least, it was not lower than Muyu's. The two of them could not block it at all. Muyu tapped the roof in front of him with the tip of his foot and flew towards Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing. He quickly landed beside the two of them. Their vitality had not dissipated, which meant that they were still alive. Muyu was just about to squat down to check their condition when the two of them suddenly burst into action. Yellow array bases flashed around their bodies and turned into sharp swords that stabbed towards Muyu. What's going on? Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing were both at the Jindan stage. With their cultivation level, they could not hurt Muyu. However, Muyu still did not understand why the two of them would suddenly attack him. He dodged their attacks. With the help of the flames, he was shocked to see that there was a yellow talisman stuck in the middle of Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing's foreheads. Chapter 422. He, the new disciple of the Array faction, is indeed extraordinary. Even your companions can't do anything to you. A sinister smile was accompanied by a yellow light. A young man with a fierce face walked out from the darkness. Muyu had seen this young man before. He was the one who followed Zhou Jinglin. This person had a sinister aura and a strong spirit energy wave. He was an out-of-body talisman master. In the middle of the night, the Southern Star Taoist temple was attacked. Many houses were on fire, and the fire lit up the entire Southern Star Taoist temple. Thick smoke billowed everywhere, and the sounds of fighting could be heard. What a powerful talisman technique! It can actually control them, Muyu said in a low voice. Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing were restrained by a talisman paper on their foreheads. Strange green talisman patterns appeared on their faces and crisscrossed all over their bodies. Their eyes were dull, and it was obvious that they had lost their consciousness. The God's Soul Talisman is not something that two mere Jindan period cultivators can escape from. You're indeed worthy of being a Khanate disciple, the young man sneered. How is Feng Mu worthy of being remembered by an out-of-body stage array master? Muyu said unhurriedly. He did not have any intention of underestimating his opponent. If it was Luo Feilong or Ji Wenkai, he naturally would not take it to heart. However, his opponent's cultivation level was higher than his, so he had to be cautious. Talisman masters were the same as array masters. Their combat power was higher than ordinary cultivators. Although Muyu could not be treated as an ordinary cultivator, he had never come into contact with talisman masters before and did not know what methods they had. I heard that the Array faction wants to send a Jindan period Khanate disciple to deal with our talisman master. I want to know how someone from the Jindan period can compete with me, the young man said with a smile. The sounds of fighting continued outside. However, at this moment, He Tianxiang's voice resounded through the entire Southern Star Taoist temple. Ha! Old Nanxing, your disciples and grand disciples are already under my control. Let's see how you can fight me alone. Hurry up and surrender. He Tianxiang, you are despicable and shameless. Taoist Nanxing was shocked and furious at the same time. But, with a loud explosion, a figure smashed down and shattered the wall beside Muyu. Taoist Nanxing crawled up from the rubble with great difficulty. When he saw Muyu, it was as if he had seen his savior. He staggered over and asked anxiously, "Nephew, where is Lord Ma Zhongshe?" At this moment, Taoist Nanxing's hair was disheveled and his entire body was covered in wounds. He was drenched in blood and his aura was weak. Although he was at the 9th heavenly layer of the nascent soul realm, it seemed that He Tianxiang was more powerful than him. He was no match for him. The young man glanced at him indifferently and smiled. "Are you looking for this person?" Ma Mingxuan slowly walked out from the corner. There was a wound on his chest that was still bleeding, but he was oblivious to it. He only looked at Taoist Nanxing expressionlessly. Plop! When Taoist Nanxing saw Ma Mingxuan, it was as if he had seen his savior. He knelt down in front of Ma Mingxuan and kept kowtowing. Lord Zhongshe, please help our Nanxing Taoist monastery tide over this calamity. Nanxing is extremely grateful for Lord's great kindness. Please, Lord. Mu Yu pressed down on Taoist Nanxing's shoulder and stopped him from kowtowing. He said seriously, "He is already under control. You don't have to beg anymore." What? Taoist Nanxing lifted his head in disbelief. His gaze landed on Ma Mingxuan's chest. There was a green talisman paper stuck there. The talisman patterns were faintly discernible as they circulated around Ma Mingxuan's body. Taoist Nanxing's face immediately turned ashen. He sighed and said, "Does the heavens really want my Nanxing Taoist monastery to perish? Old Nanxing, if you kowtow to me and beg for mercy, I might consider leaving your corpse intact." A figure descended from the sky. It was a sinister old man. He had a three-pronged beard, and almost all his hair was gone. His cultivation was also at the 9th heavenly layer of the nascent soul realm. He walked in front of the young man from the talisman sect and bowed to him. "Thank you for your help, my lord." "He Tianqiang, you are despicable and shameless." Taoist Nanxing stood up and said angrily. He Tianqiang smiled sinisterly. "The winner takes all. Now you are the only one left from your Nanxing Taoist monastery. Let's see how you are going to fight me today." Many figures gradually flashed in the surroundings. These figures were all dressed in the Nanxing Taoist monastery's uniform. Every one of them was Taoist Nanxing's disciple and grand disciple. However, there was a yellow talisman stuck in the middle of their forehead. Just like Gu Fei and Jing Yuqing, all the disciples of the Nanxing Taoist monastery were under the control of the talisman sect's divine soul talisman, except for Taoist Nanxing Yu. Taoist Nanxing's eyes were about to pop out of their socket. He was heartbroken when he saw his disciples pointing their swords at him. "Old man, your Nanxing Taoist monastery is done for. As long as you kill this disciple of the Array sect beside you, I will consider letting you live." The young man sized up Mu Yu as if he was playing a game of cat and mouse. It would be best if he could borrow someone else's hand to kill Mu Yu. This way, the Array sect would not be able to do anything to the Talisman sect. Now that this place was completely surrounded, he did not believe that a mere disciple of the Array sect would be able to fly away. Kill him? Taoist Nanxing looked at Mu Yu. It would be easy for a nascent soul cultivator like him to kill a Jindan period disciple of the Array sect. If he killed Mu Yu here, no one would find out. He could also live. This was a very tempting condition, however. Taoist Nanxing shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Although my cultivation is inferior, I would not do such a shameless thing. Nephew Feng Mu, leave this place quickly. I have implicated all of you. Even if I die today, I will make them pay the price." Taoist Nanxing had already stabbed out with a sword in his hand and charged towards He Tianqiang. Mu Yu sighed softly. This Taoist Nanxing was a straightforward person. This disaster was actually caused by him. Nanxing Taoist Temple was the one who was implicated. He clenched his hand and pulled Taoist Nanxing back. Then, he said, "You are not his match. Just recuperate at the side." Taoist Nanxing widened his eyes. He was at the 9th firmament of the nascent soul realm. He had already mustered all his strength to charge out. His strength was not something a Jindan period cultivator could hold back. However, Mu Yu seemed to have 1,000 kilograms of strength and forcefully suppressed him. Was this really something a Jindan period cultivator could do? "You are," Taoist Nanxing turned his head to look at Mu Yu in surprise. However, Mu Yu had already walked in front of him. He looked at the youth from the talisman sect and said indifferently, "There are so many people who want to kill me. You are not the first and you will not be the last." "What arrogance! He Tianqiang, go and kill him," the youth from the talisman sect said. "Yes, my lord." The sinister He Tianqiang's figure was like a bolt of lightning. He charged towards Mu Yu with the momentum of a thunderbolt. He was also at the 9th firmament of the nascent soul realm. In his eyes, Mu Yu, who was at the Jindan period, was obviously a dead man. "Be careful, my dear nephew. He Tianqiang's ancient soul saber is extremely sinister. You are not his match," Taoist Nan Xing shouted. He was very familiar with He Tianqiang's methods. He also believed that Mu Yu during the Jindan period was not a match for He Tianqiang. Just as Taoist Nan Xing wanted to help Mu Yu's next move stunned him. "You want to kill me by sending an old fellow at the nascent soul realm?" Mu Yu did not even look at He Tianqiang. The sword in his hand had already pierced out. The shadow clone sword was accompanied by a faint green light. It disappeared into the air and returned to Mu Yu's hand in an instant. He Tianqiang's sinister smile suddenly froze. He looked at his chest in disbelief. He did not know when there was a bloody hole in his chest. Faintly discernible wisps of death qi had invaded his body. As the death qi entered his body, he felt as if he had sunk into a world of bone-chilling coldness. This coldness came from his soul. Then, he felt that his consciousness had unknowingly shattered and gradually dissipated. He could even clearly feel that his consciousness was being devoured by the green sword. "How did I die?" This was He Tianqiang's last thought. He did not see clearly how the sword came about. He even felt that it was a little ridiculous. How could he die in the hands of someone from the Jindan period? However, he could never understand. He Tianqiang's entire body fell heavily to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. There was no sign of life. No one noticed that a faint white light lit up on He Tianqiang's body. It wanted to disappear into the void. However, this faint white light seemed to be pulled by some force and disappeared into the shadow clone sword in Mu Yu's hand. Mu Ling had been merged with the shadow clone sword all this while. "This is instant kill?" Taoist Nan Xing stared blankly at He Tianqiang's corpse. His opponent was on par with him. He was also a 9th firmament nascent soul realm cultivator. However, he could not even withstand one move from this young man from the Array sect. He was not from the Jindan period. The young man from the Talisman sect's face darkened. He did not expect Mu Yu to have concealed his strength. There was a mysterious place in the three-tiered continent called the Three-Tiered Palace. It was as if they were located in the land of the immortals. The palace was surrounded by divine light. It made people feel reverence and no one dared to blaspheme it. There were 2 divine monuments in the palace. They were divided into yin and yang, one black and one white. They were thousands of feet long and towered into the clouds. The white divine monument was dotted with green dots of light. They were like stars in the sky. There were countless of them. Occasionally, some green dots would disappear. Then, green dots would appear in other places. These green dots were intertwined with fine veins. It was as if each green dot was connected to each other. The other black array tablet was dotted with white dots of light. However, there were fewer white dots of light. "How's the population situation in the three-tiered continent today?" A person shrouded in white light looked at the white dots on the black array tablet and asked calmly. "Reporting to Lord Guardian Formation, a total of 109,136 people died, and 109,951 people were born." Another voice said respectfully, "The number of births is 915 more than the number of deaths. Does this mean that we will not be able to collect soul power today?" The Array Guardian sounded displeased. The green dots on the white divine monument represented every living person in the three-tiered continent. The disappearance and reappearance of the green dots represented the deaths and births of the three-tiered continent's population. When a person died, soul power would be produced. However, this soul power would be attached to the newly born. Only the excess soul power would gradually return to the black divine monument in the three-tiered palace through the arrays in various places in the three-tiered continent. The white dots on the black divine monument were the soul power. This was the source of power that maintained the three-tiered palace. However, the soul power did not increase today. In fact, the soul power on the black array tablet had not increased for a long time. It should be. Wait a minute. After one person died, all of his soul power disappeared. It completely disappeared. This shouldn't be. Everyone will produce soul power after death. Why is there only one person missing? One person's soul power is missing? The array guardian muttered to himself. This was the first time he had discovered such a thing. However, he did not continue asking because he felt that one person was insignificant. Chapter 423. So you've been hiding your strength? I've underestimated you. A look of surprise flashed across the young man's face. However, when Mu Yu attacked, he had already discovered that Mu Yu's cultivation level was only at the out-of-body stage. He had never taken out-of-body stage cultivators seriously. Even if I didn't kill him, you would have killed him, right? Mu Yu said coldly. The people from the Talisman sect had deliberately used He Tianxiang to kill Mu Yu. They wanted to create the illusion that Mu Yu had died by accident so that the people from the Array sect would not be able to trace it back to the Talisman sect. In that case, He Tianxiang would definitely be killed after using him. In the past, he would always feel uncomfortable when he killed someone. The loss of life made him very uncomfortable. However, He Tianxiang's death did not affect him at all. In fact, he even felt a trace of joy. There seemed to be an indescribable sense of joy in his heart. This was the first time that Mu Ling had killed someone after Mu Yu had been contaminated by the death aura of the netherworld grass. He realized that something had changed in his body. I have to thank you for killing him for me. I didn't have to do it myself. The young man from the Talisman sect glanced at He Tianxiang's corpse with disdain. He Tianxiang was just a tool that he used to assassinate Mu Yu. He wanted to use He Tianxiang to kill Mu Yu so that the Talisman sect could avoid a conflict with the Array sect in advance. Obviously, the information provided by Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai was wrong. Mu Yu's cultivation was not at the Jindan stage. However, this was nothing to the proud young man from the Talisman sect. His cultivation was at the 9th heaven of out-of-body stage, and he was on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. Why would he be afraid of an unknown kid? Remember, my name is Mo Zimming, the 71st Supreme Immortal. I don't want you to die without knowing why. Mo Zimming from the Talisman sect smiled viciously. I don't want to know the name of a dead person. Mu Yu was filled with killing intent. Hatred surged in his heart. He did not know if it was for Ku Mu or for heaven. However, the Talisman sect and Stargate were in cahoots and wanted to kill him for their own purposes. In Mu Yu's opinion, they were jackals of the same tribe. He did not mind killing one more person. Insolence! Mo Ziming's feet stepped on the ground, and layers of cracks spread out with him as the center. 8 purple talisman papers appeared around him. The purple talisman papers were arranged in the shape of the 8 trigrams, and the purple spiritual power connected them together. The violent spiritual power gathered toward the 8 talisman papers, and the terrifying power became stronger and stronger. Without another word, Mu Yu soared into the sky and headed out of the South Star Taoist Temple. If they were to fight Mo Zimming here, with the destructive power of an out-of-body cultivator, the entire South Star Taoist Temple would be destroyed, and even Taoist South Star would not be able to survive. He lowered his head and scanned the South Star Taoist Temple. At that moment, there were still many disciples of the Cloud River sect waiting outside. They did not know that their sect master had already perished. The rest of you, kill this old man. Mo Ziming's ultimate goal was to silence everyone. Therefore, he would not allow anyone in the South Star Taoist temple to live. At that moment, he used the god's soul talisman to control many people in the South Star Taoist temple. He actually wanted to order these people to kill their sect master. His target was Mu Yu. Worried that Mu Yu would escape, he paused and chased after Mu Yu. When he stopped, Mu Yu was already waiting for him in the sky above the forest. Array faction versus talisman faction, right? Mu Yu's eyes focused. 4 innate array bases appeared, and an aura that was not weaker than Mo Ziming's was released. The faintly discernible array patterns in the surroundings instantly enveloped Mo Ziming. Your array faction will never be able to defeat our talisman faction. Mo Ziming smiled evilly. 8 purple talismans flashed. His fingertips moved slightly, and purple spiritual energy rushed out from the talismans. It gradually gathered in front of his chest and formed a purple 8 trigrams. A huge purple hand stretched out from the 8 trigrams and slammed down on Mu Yu. A majestic aura rushed towards Mu Yu. This palm had locked onto Mu Yu's aura. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. It vaguely reached the power of the first heaven of the spirit severing stage. Mu Yu was slightly shocked. A talisman master could unleash such terrifying power with the help of talismans? However, Mu Yu did not panic. The 4 array bases touched each other, and his fingertips quickly drew spiritual energy. A sticky spider web seemed to appear in the air, causing the purple hand to slow down. However, the spider web was quickly broken and continued to move towards Mu Yu. However, because of the spider web, Mu Yu had bought enough time. He disappeared from the spot and escaped the range of the giant hand. The giant hand fell in the forest below. All the trees were destroyed, and a hand-shaped pit appeared on the ground. Purple Spirit Palm, the innate talisman technique of the talisman faction, was known for its powerful attack. This Mo Ziming almost had the mentality of killing with one blow, but unfortunately, Mu Yu dodged it. The array faction's array technique was not weak. Inescapable net could not only be used to capture the opponent, but also to resist fierce attack. Countless green swallows screamed and swept towards Mo Ziming from different directions. Green swallows seize sound, a technique that Mu Yu had just learned. These green swallows only left behind phantoms. It was impossible to see the specific shadow at all. However, each green swallows was like a shuttle, as if they could penetrate people. Mu Yu had never really used green swallows seize sound in front of Master Lu. At this moment, all the spiritual energy was released without reservation. The number of green swallows seize sound reached a terrifying 100, and they were densely intertwined in the air. Mo Ziming's left index finger hooked back, and the purple spirit palm appeared again. This time it did not hit but held itself. Countless green swallows pounced on the giant palm one after another and died one after another. These green swallows did not have any powerful strength. Their role was only to block the enemy's hearing. Unfortunately, Mo Ziming had a deep understanding of the array faction's array technique. This green swallow seize sound could not do anything to him. Mu Yu's finger moved slightly, and the rest of the green swallows stopped swooping down. Instead, they circled around, waiting for an opportunity to move. However, the sky suddenly flashed with blue electric sparks. A bolt of lightning appeared out of thin air, and countless blue thunder snakes shot out from the lightning. Thunder Snake Swift Shadow. The thunder snakes really explained what it meant to be as fast as lightning. Their bodies were fast to an inconceivable extent. Their speed was fast, and their strength was even stronger. They were not like the green swallows that had no attack power. Instead, they had a powerful tearing power, as if they could drill countless holes in the sky. The thunder snakes exploded on the purple spirit palm. The purple spirit palm exploded, and countless electric sparks spread out. Mo Ziming was shocked. He could clearly feel that cracks had appeared on the purple spirit palm. However, even more thunder snakes seemed to fly out from the lightning in the sky endlessly. If this continued, his purple spirit palm would be destroyed sooner or later. Mo Ziming had vaguely heard his master, Zhou Jinglin, mention this thunder snake's swift shadow. It was an offensive array technique that Master Lu was most proud of. Even Zhou Jinglin did not dare to take it head-on. He did not expect this kid to have learned such a terrifying array technique. Mo Ziming knew that he had underestimated Mu Yu. However, as a Xiantian disciple of the Talisman faction, his ability to adapt to changes was extremely strong. He waved his hand, and a black talisman paper floated out. The talisman paper carried a heavy and solid aura. Then, the talisman paper flickered with mysterious runes, and a black overlord spear rushed out from the talisman paper. This spear was called Black Gold Langia, and it was made from precious black gold. Its value was immeasurable. It was a treasure given to him by his master. Usually, it was sealed in the black talisman to recuperate. Once it was used, even he could not fully control its power. Precious treasures could be used as the base of an array. It could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was more effective than an array base. After all, the spiritual energy contained in an array base would be exhausted. When the spiritual energy was exhausted, the array base would lose its effect. However, precious treasures did not have such a limitation. Once the black gold langia was out, the brilliant heavenly might was displayed. With a thrust of the spear, the wind and clouds of heaven and earth began to change color. The lightning summoned by Mu Yu was actually attracted by this heavy spear. The lightning covered the entire body of the black gold langia. Mo Ziming once again transformed into a purple spirit and held the black gold langia. With a wave of the purple spirit palm, the black gold langia directed the lightning to the vast land. The lightning sank into the ground and struck the trees below. Countless trees were burned, and they were set ablaze. The lightning was extinguished, and the thunder snakes that filled the sky disappeared. What a powerful spear! Mu Yu realized that his thunder snake swift shadow was destroyed by the black gold langia. He immediately understood that the black gold langia was a rare treasure. Otherwise, an ordinary spear would not be able to withstand the baptism of lightning. My black gold langia is even more powerful. Mo Ziming sneered and waved his purple spirit palm again. The black gold langia pierced through the air with an insufferably arrogant aura and pierced towards Mu Yu. Mu Yu moved his hands and guided the spiritual energy with his fingertips. The 4 array bases immediately turned into a huge shield to protect him. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A slight hissing sound came from one of the array bases. Following that, he realized that a crack had appeared on one of his innate array bases. Not good! Mu Yu exclaimed. The spiritual energy of one of the innate array bases seemed to have been exhausted. The aura of the shield that Mu Yu transformed into instantly weakened by 30%. At this moment, the black gold langia had already pierced towards him. Boom! The shield that Mu Yu transformed into was broken by the black gold langia. It exploded into pieces of spiritual energy and scattered everywhere. Although Mu Yu tried his best to avoid it, the aftershock still scattered on his chest. The huge tremor made his chest feel stuffy. Little Handsome, are you all right? Mu Yu retreated and shouted softly. Little Handsome was in his arms. The aftershock of the black gold langia had swept across Little Handsome's body. If Little Handsome had not blocked it for him, there would have been a big hole in his chest. Damn it, it hurts. Who stabbed my chrysanthemum? Little Handsome cursed as he touched his butt. He popped his head out and saw the black gold langia. He was instantly enraged. I'm so angry. Break this **T stir for me. Mu Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Little Handsome's thick skin was once again displayed. This fellow nestled in Mu Yu's arms and slept every day. At the crucial moment, he could even use it as a protective armor. It was really hard on him. However, there was a serious problem. He had just refined these 4 innate array bases in the past few days. He did not expect that one of the innate array bases would have a problem. Then, what should he do in the next battle? The reason why the innate array bases were called innate array bases was that the spiritual energy contained in their bodies was very pure and quite overbearing. It could be said that it was inexhaustible. However, Mu Yu's innate array base seemed to be second-hand goods. It was very likely that Master Lu had used it before. This innate array base was indeed used by Master Lu. It was no longer enough for him to use another attack at the combination stage, so he gave it to Mu Yu. Master Lu thought that Mu Yu only had the cultivation of the Jindan period. The array techniques used during the Jindan period were simply insignificant. Even if the spiritual energy of this innate array base was about to be exhausted, it would not be a problem for a person in the Jindan period to use it thousands of times. However, Master Lu never expected that Mu Yu's true strength was at the out-of-body stage. The array techniques used during the out-of-body stage were thousands of times more powerful than those used during the Jindan period. This innate array base was completely exhausted after only using it twice. Oh my God! Master Lu, you tricked me! Mu Yu was furious. At that time, he had carved the array onto the innate array base in front of Master Lu. Naturally, he could not use the innate array base he had obtained from Deadwood Daddy. He thought that the innate array base given by Master Lu would not have any problems. Who would have thought that it was a defective product? Every array foundation needed to be refined before it could be used. This was a time-consuming process. Although Mu Yu still had many innate array foundations, he had only refined these 4 innate array foundations. It was impossible for him to replace the rest in a short period of time. Although array masters were very strong, their shortcomings were immediately exposed. Once the spiritual energy of the array base was exhausted, they would have to face a storm of attacks from their opponents. Mo Ziming was an innate disciple of the Talisman sect. The innate talisman paper in his hands must be full of spiritual energy. It was impossible for it to be second-hand goods like Mu Yu's. If Mu Yu wanted to win today, it would be impossible for him to do so with array technique. However, he could not openly use his sword technique because once he used it, he would be suspected by Mo Ziming. The people of the Talisman sect would not have such a profound sword technique. If he could not kill Mo Ziming today and let him escape, his identity would most likely be exposed. With the relationship between the Talisman sect and Stargate, he might even be discovered by Tian Buho. Chapter 424. What's wrong? Are the people of the array faction so poor? The array base is useless after only 2 uses? Mo Ziming said sarcastically. He did not control the Golden Crow Langia to attack again because it was too powerful and he had not completely refined it. The 2 attacks had also consumed a lot of his innate talisman base's spiritual chi. The talisman technique used by the Talisman faction and the array faction were similar. The array faction directly looked for precious materials to make the innate talisman base, while the Talisman faction looked for precious materials to make talisman paper. Different colors of talisman paper represented different quality. Naturally, there were innate talisman base, intermediate talisman base, and acquired talisman base. When I go back, I must settle the score with Master Lu. Mu Yu was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He calculated a little. Just now, he had used up a lot of spiritual chi to create 100 green swallows. Now, he regretted it. The spiritual chi in his body was different from others. Mu Yu, a disciple of the innate realm whom he had never met, could only summon 20 green swallows because he did not have a mutated spiritual chi like Mu Yu. Mu Yu could summon 100 green swallows easily, but it also meant that the innate talisman base would consume a lot. The array faction tests the disciple's willpower. The most powerful thing about innate realm disciples is that they can form anything. You know nothing. Muyu blushed when he said this. How could he form anything? Even he could not believe it. Who would want to use other things when there was a ready-made innate talisman base? Mo Zimming was an innate realm disciple of the talisman faction. He definitely did not lack innate talisman base. However, Muyu was now very poor. Array master was a prodigal profession. If one wanted to become powerful, he must have a continuous supply of array bases to maintain his strength. These array bases were very expensive. One innate talisman base cost at least 100,000 spiritual stones. At that time, when Muyu disguised himself as a Jindan period cultivator, Master Lu thought that the innate formation base he had used was enough for a Jindan period disciple to practice, so he didn't think too much and generously gave Muyu more than 100 innate formation bases. Muyu was moved to tears, thinking that Master Lu was really a good senior. Now that he was talking about this, he was crying. Mo Zimming paused for a moment, then sneered and said, "Anything can be used as an array. Even many Xiantian symbol masters and array masters wouldn't dare to say that they could easily do it. I'd like to see how a mere culmination heaven disciple like you can do it." As he spoke, the golden crow Langya in his hand once again lit up with a black radiance. Then, a tyrannical spear light shot towards Muyu. Its power was still undiminished, and a cold, murderous aura shrouded Muyu's body. In the blink of an eye, a violent aura had already attacked. Muyu tapped lightly with the falling dust steps. As the black spiritual power in his body surged, endless death aura spread out. In the blink of an eye, he escaped from the golden crow Langya's murderous aura. However, at this moment, the spirit-gathering array slammed down again. Muyu's fingers intertwined, and the three innate formation bases burst out with a strong light, forming an octagonal formation. A sword emerged from the formation. He had to do this to make Mo Zimming think that he was using a sword summoned by an array technique. After all, he had used this sword once just now to kill He Tianqiang, who was in the 9th heavenly layer of the nascent soul stage. He wouldn't let Mo Zimming associate him with the sword Shadow Chen Feng's disciple. "I'll let you see what it means to be an array that can be used as an array." Ever since Muyu learned about the sword array, he had been secretly studying his Shadow Clone Sword and how to use the sword array to maximize the 9 Heaven Sword Guide. The information he had read about the formation faction showed that the sword array required many flying swords that could automatically absorb spiritual power as the array base. For this, one Shadow Clone Sword was enough. However, the factors that needed to be considered in the sword array were too complicated. Muyu had not completely integrated his 9 Heaven Sword Guides into the sword array. However, the arrow had to be shot. Since he was using an array technique to deal with a talisman technique, he had to let his sword have the characteristics of an array technique. The Shadow Clone Sword split into 6, and the monstrous sword Qi instantly suppressed the golden crow Langya's aura. The 6 flying swords intertwined in the air and stood in a mysterious position. Then, the sword Qi of each Shadow Clone Sword connected with each other. The majestic sword Qi instantly turned into an even larger giant sword and slashed toward the golden crow Langya. When the golden crow Langya and the Shadow Clone Sword collided with each other, an earth-shaking roar was immediately heard. An invisible airwave spread out with the 2 magic treasures as the center, destroying all the surrounding trees. What a powerful sword array! Mo Zimming's expression changed slightly. Obviously, he did not expect that Muyu, a culmination disciple of the formation faction, would actually have such terrifying strength. When this giant sword collided with his golden crow Langya, he felt a wave of pressure. The golden crow Langya was a rather powerful magic treasure. At this moment, he could barely unleash 30% of this magic treasure's power. With his cultivation level, it was impossible for him to unleash the full power of the golden crow Langya. Originally, he thought that even 30% of the power would be enough to make him invincible in the out-of-body stage. However, he never expected that Mu Yu's flying sword was not inferior to the Golden Crow Langya at all. In fact, it was even stronger. Boom! The Shadow Clone sword once again clashed with the Golden Crow Langya. In the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged more than 10 blows. Even if Mu Yu could not use the 9 heaven sword guides, his sword moves were still very tricky. He was able to find the Golden Crow Langya's weakness and neutralize its attack. However, under Mo Ziming's control, every move of the Golden Crow Langya was as heavy as Mount Tai. The impact caused Mu Yu's palm to feel numb. Ding! The tip of the sword and the tip of the spear clashed together. Terrifying runes appeared and swept out again. Sword chi crisscrossed and contended against the runes. Both of them were sent flying. Mu Yu only dared to unleash the Shadow Clone sword to this extent. He could not use the 9 heaven sword guides. Once he used the 9 heaven sword guides, he would be out of the range of the array. Now, because Mu Yu was too flamboyant, many people in the 3 continents knew how powerful the 9 heaven sword guides was. If he were to use it here, it might arouse the suspicion of others. He had to use the array to control the 6 Shadow Clone swords. Streaks of spirit power flowed between the Shadow Clone swords and swept towards Mo Ziming from different directions. Mo Ziming's purple spirit held onto the Golden Crow Langya and quickly clashed with all the Shadow Clone swords. In midair, the sword shadows and spear shadows clashed and created sparks. The ground was already filled with thousands of ravines and ravines. Violent spirit power and runes were everywhere. However, every time Mu Yu used the array to disguise his sword moves, he always felt a strange sense of familiarity. His sword moves seemed to be like a fish in water within the array. It was even more free and easy. Could the 9 heaven sword guides also be a sword array? Feng Haochen did not tell Mu Yu whether the 9 heaven sword guides had anything to do with the array. However, when Mu Yu used the array to envelop the Shadow Clone swords, that kind of free and easy sword momentum was very strange. Could it be that the 9 heaven sword guides itself is a sword array? Mu Yu did not continue to think about it. He was already very aggrieved in this battle. He needed to finish off the opponent in front of him first. Mo Ziming was even more aggrieved. As a Xiantian disciple of the Talisman sect and a member of the Supreme Immortal list, he was extremely proud of his talisman skills. However, he did not expect to meet an iron nail today. Even the Golden Crow Langya, which he was proud of, could not take down the opponent. This made him feel very humiliated. He shouted loudly. Suddenly, a red talisman flashed out from his body. The talisman instantly shattered, and a ripple that tore through space enveloped Mo Ziming. Mo Ziming's body disappeared on the spot and reappeared behind Mu Yu. Die! Mo Ziming shouted viciously. This was a precious teleportation talisman that could only be refined by a talisman master in the form synthesis stage. It allowed the talisman master to teleport to any position within a specific distance and kill the opponent by surprise. The teleportation talisman was originally used to save one's life. However, Mo Ziming did not care so much now. He wanted to kill Mu Yu. Pfft. The teleportation talisman's speed greatly exceeded Mu Yu's expectations. He only heard a whistling sound behind him. His body quickly tilted to the side, but his shoulder was still pierced by the Golden Crow Langya's spear. A deep wound appeared on Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu turned around and stabbed with his sword. A sharp sword chi was sent back. Mo Ziming had already grabbed the Golden Crow Langya and wanted to block the attack. However, his close combat skills were not as fast as Mu Yu's. His head was almost cut off by Mu Yu's sword. If he had not crushed another teleportation talisman in time and put some distance between them, his life would have been in danger. A talisman master was the same as an array master. Their array techniques and talisman techniques were very powerful in ordinary battles. They relied on their powerful array techniques and talisman techniques to fight with others. However, they were at a disadvantage in close combat. Although the teleportation talisman could allow one to teleport to the back of the opponent and assassinate him, at the same time, one had to face the danger of being counterattacked by a powerful opponent in close combat. Therefore, the teleportation talisman was more used for escaping and dodging than for assassination. Let's see how many times you can use the teleportation talisman. Muyu snorted. The white spiritual power in his body surged out and slowly healed the wound caused by the golden crow Langya. At the same time, his entire body rushed toward Mo Zimming again. He found that Mo Zimming's speed of using talisman skills was getting slower and slower. It was obvious that controlling the golden crow Langya consumed a lot of his spiritual power. The teleportation talisman had the ability to break through the void at the combination stage, but at the same time, it also meant that it was not cheap and could be bought everywhere. Master Lu had once introduced the characteristics of the teleportation array to him. It was the same as the teleportation talisman. The teleportation array was suitable for array masters below the combination stage because it forcibly sealed the ability of the combination stage in the array. This itself exceeded the cultivation of other cultivators. Therefore, the lower the cultivation of people who used the teleportation talisman, the more likely they would face the possibility of their spiritual power being instantly exhausted. Mo Zimming only had the cultivation of the out-of-body stage. He had used the teleportation talisman twice in a row, and the consumption of spiritual power in his body had reached an astonishing level. It would be fine if he used the teleportation talisman to kill his opponent, but the problem was that he was almost killed by his opponent. Damn it! Mo Zimming was already regretting using the teleportation talisman. He was too impatient. He originally wanted to win with one blow, but Mu Yu's reaction was beyond his expectations. He actually dodged that blow. If he used the teleportation talisman again, he would definitely collapse. Mu Yu held the shadow clone in his hand and rushed forward. From the moment Mo Zimming was unable to deal with his sword and used the teleportation talisman to escape, he had already understood Mo Zimming's weakness. Mo Zimming was not good at close combat at all. As long as Mu Yu got close, Mo Zimming would almost certainly lose. The shadow clone sword was already in his hand, mixed with a sharp sword chi, and it was heading toward Mo Zimming. However, the corner of Mo Zimming's mouth suddenly revealed a sly smile. At the same time, a figure blocked in front of Mo Zimming. It was Ma Mingxuan. Ma Mingxuan's body was surrounded by 8 central heaven array bases. As the light flowed, a fire dragon with monstrous flames rushed toward Mu Yu. Mu Yu was shocked. He stopped his body abruptly. Surrounded by sword chi, he dodged the fire dragon's bite and retreated. What? You don't dare to kill him? Mo Zimming laughed sinisterly. Ma Mingxuan was controlled by his god soul talisman and was ordered by him like a puppet. At the same time, Mo Zimming took a spirit-restoring pill, and the consumed spiritual power in his body was rapidly recovering. Chapter 425. Ma Mingxuan's mind was controlled by Mo Zimming's talisman. This talisman was like a slave pill, suppressing Ma Mingxuan's consciousness. However, other than being unable to disobey the master's orders, the slave pill had its own consciousness. The person under the control of the talisman was just an unconscious puppet. Moreover, there was a time limit. Once the spiritual energy of the talisman was exhausted, it would lose its effect. However, the talisman was enough to control Ma Mingxuan, who was in the out-of-body stage. Ma Mingxuan was also in the out-of-body stage, not to mention Mo Zimming, who had taken the spirit revitalizing pill. The spirit revitalizing pill was a 5th-grade pill that could quickly replenish the spiritual energy lost in a cultivator's body. This kind of pill was quite precious. One pill was worth at least 100,000 spiritual stones or more. Ordinary people could not afford it. Only innate stage disciples like Mo Zimming could get their hands on a few. Of course, Mu Yu had more spirit revitalizing pills than Mo Zimming. However, the spirit revitalizing pills were useless to Mu Yu at this moment. He still had enough spiritual energy. However, it was different for Mo Zimming. Mo Zimming had used up all his spiritual energy after using the talisman twice. Now that he had taken the spirit revitalizing pill, it was equivalent to standing up and jumping around. Two out-of-body stage cultivators in their prime were fighting against Mu Yu. Mu Yu was at a disadvantage. What is the spirit talisman? Why can't it control Ma Mingxuan, who is in the out-of-body stage? Is there any connection between it and the slave pill? Mu Yu pondered. He had never come into contact with the slave pill and did not know the composition of the slave pill. However, since the slave pill and the spirit talisman could both control people, there must be some similarities between them. While Mu Yu was thinking, the huge fire dragon rushed over again. This was the teleportation array that Ma Mingxuan had refined. It was called the Fire Dragon Seal. It had the shape of a fire dragon and was very domineering. Countless flames fell on Mu Yu like meteors. Mu Yu did not dare to take it head-on. He did not like flames and could only dodge. Damn it, why is it a dragon again? I really hate this stupid thing. Xiao Shui muttered. Little mouse, who are you calling stupid? The dragon vine lightly hummed before continuing. This dragon only has a superficial appearance and doesn't have any dragon's might at all. Let me scare it. Dragon's aura rose from Mu Yu's arm and enveloped the fire dragon. The fire dragon in the air paused for a moment, but it still rushed toward Mu Yu without slowing down. Caterpillar, are you stupid? That thing has no life, how can it be scared? Xiao Shui sneered. Oh, dragons, dragon said. Mu Yu helplessly listened to the two of them bickering. They couldn't help him at all. He had to settle everything himself. What a pain in the ass. He kept dodging, but a huge purple spirit palm appeared above his head. The purple spirit palm and the golden crow Langya pressed down from different directions, completely blocking Mu Yu's path of retreat. I know how to deal with this fire dragon. As long as I get the caterpillar to remove the god's soul talisman from Ma Mingxuan's body, he should be able to regain consciousness. Little Marshall finally made a constructive suggestion. Okay. I'm going to summon the dragon god. Needless to say, Dragon Vine was the one to do it. Dragon Vine was also an out-of-body cultivator. If he joined the battle, Mu Yu would be under less pressure. However, Dragon Vine couldn't just appear casually. He had to at least disguise himself as Ma Mingxuan and summon it with a formation. 7 second-hand Xiantian array bases quickly appeared beside Mu Yu. Mu Yu hadn't refined these Xiantian array bases. She was just putting on an act and putting on a show. A 7-colored light lit up and surrounded Mu Yu. The dazzling light almost blinded his own eyes. However, he still casually said, "All things can be formed. Dragon God descends." The formation pattern wrapped around the dragon Rattan. The dragon Rattan roared, and its body grew rapidly. Its out-of-body stage cultivation suddenly burst out, suppressing the momentum created by Mo Zimming and Ma Mingxuan. The dragon Rattan turned into a green light and rushed towards Ma Mingxuan. Mu Yu took out a level 6 Imperial Wind pill and swallowed it. His body suddenly became very agile. The level 6 Imperial Wind pill could allow him to exert the speed of the spirit severing stage. Even if it couldn't compare to the teleportation of the form synthesis stage, it was more than enough to deal with Mo Zimming. Imperial Wind pill? You actually have such a pill? Mo Zimming saw that Mu Yu's figure was like a ghost in front of him. It was far beyond the speed of an out-of-body cultivator. He immediately understood that Mu Yu had taken the Imperial Wind pill. However, the Imperial Wind Pill was a level 6 pill. It probably couldn't be bought without 1,000,000 spirit stones. How could the Array faction spend so much money to prepare such a pill for this kid? Mo Zimming's killing intent had broken through the sky. The more the Array faction thought highly of Muyu, the more he wanted Muyu to die. Damn, only you are allowed to take the spirit-restoring pill, but I am not allowed to use the Imperial Wind Pill? I am the little ancestor of the Pill Cauldron sect. Muyu cursed and rushed behind Mo Zimming with his sword. However, Mo Zimming had already crushed the teleportation talisman to escape. At the same time, the purple spirit palm protected him again. With the help of the Imperial Wind Pill, Muyu almost caught up with Mo Zimming in the blink of an eye. His sword slashed on the purple spirit palm, causing a strong roar, which made Mo Zimming feel a tremor. Mo Zimming didn't expect that Muyu had so many messy abilities. He was caught off guard. He saw from the corner of his eyes that the flickering azure dragon had bypassed the fire dragons in the sky and drilled into Ma Mingxuan's chest. When Mo Zimming was dodging in a panic, he didn't have time to command Ma Mingxuan to defend himself. The azure dragon had succeeded. The divine soul talisman on Ma Mingxuan's chest had been torn off. He had lost control of Ma Mingxuan and immediately understood that he had lost his advantage. I will make you pay for this, Mo Zimming said angrily. He took out another teleportation talisman. This was his last teleportation talisman. With his spiritual power, he could only use the teleportation talisman twice. Adding the spiritual power recovered by the spirit recovery pill, he could only use it 4 times. He no longer had any spirit recovery pills. He could only rely on his last teleportation talisman to escape. Muyu's eyes flashed with intense killing intent. This kind of person must die. Xiao Shui suddenly thought of something and quickly shouted, "You can't defeat him, and you can't kill him. He is the 71st Extreme Immortal. You are the 80th Extreme Immortal. If you defeat him, you will take his place." Muyu also had the Extreme Immortal mark on him. If he defeated Mo Zimming's Extreme Immortal mark would be attached to his hand. Even Muyu couldn't block that dog skin plaster. The rankings on the Extreme Immortal leaderboard were constantly changing. The Extreme Immortal Steel recorded everyone's rankings. Even if Muyu changed his appearance, the Extreme Immortal Steel would still show his true ranking. At that time, the people from the Talisman sect would know who killed Mo Zimming. He was not afraid of the people from the Talisman sect. Instead, he was worried that his identity would be exposed. Before he could see the Array Heavenly Tao, the Array Heavenly Tao would expel him. Mo Zimming had already crushed the teleportation talisman and escaped. Strictly speaking, he was not defeated by Muyu. Instead, he retreated without a fight. Therefore, their rankings did not change. However, Muyu was also thinking about a problem. The Extreme Immortal mark was also an array. This array would bring him a lot of trouble. How could he get rid of this array? Ma Mingxuan was caught by the dragon vine. After he escaped the control of the Divine Soul Talisman, he had already fallen unconscious. Muyu wanted to find the Divine Soul Talisman that controlled Ma Mingxuan. However, the dragon vine told him that the Divine Soul Talisman had spontaneously combusted when it was torn off. The Divine Soul Talisman is similar to the slave pill. I want to know how it works. Muyu muttered to himself for a while. Then, he brought Ma Mingxuan back to the South Star Daoist Temple. The South Star Daoist Temple had basically been wiped out. The 9th heaven of the nascent soul realm was more than enough to deal with his own disciples. Even the disciples of the Yunhe sect were trapped by the South Star Daoist Temple. The disciples of the South Star Daoist Temple were controlled by countless divine soul talismans. After the South Star Daoist Temple removed the divine soul talismans, there were no traces left behind. The talisman techniques of the Talisman sect had their own protective measures. Especially a vicious talisman technique like the Divine Soul Talisman, they naturally did not want outsiders to spy on it. When the South Star Taoist Temple saw Mu Yu return with Ma Mingxuan, he was overjoyed. He asked tentatively, "My lord, that Kane talisman master?" "He was chased away by me." Mu Yu glanced around. All the disciples of the South Star Taoist Temple were unconscious on the ground. This was the aftereffect of being controlled by the Divine Soul Talisman. However, Mu Yu had checked that Ma Mingxuan would wake up in a few hours. "Thank you, my lord. I will never forget your kindness." The South Star Taoist Temple knelt in front of Mu Yu and kowtowed to Mu Yu. "Please get up, Taoist Temple." Mu Yu hurriedly helped him up. He looked at the ruined Taoist temple and felt sorry for it. After all, it was because of him that the temple was ruined like this. The people of the Talisman sect had tried to assassinate him, and these small sects could only be implicated. "If it weren't for your power today, I'm afraid my entire Taoist temple would have been destroyed." The South Star Taoist Temple sighed. At first, he thought that Mu Yu was still in the Jindan period. He even spoke to him in the tone of an elder. Now that he thought about it, he felt ashamed. "Your disciples should be fine. As long as they are still alive, the foundation of the sect will not be destroyed. I'll go and set up the mountain protecting formation around the Taoist temple. I'll set it up so that it can withstand the attacks of out-of-body stage cultivators. That way, you won't have to worry about similar things happening in the future. Can you help me take care of my 3 senior brothers?" Mu Yu wanted to do something for the Southern Star Taoist Temple as a form of compensation. Resist the attack of the out-of-body stage? Really? When the South Star Taoist Temple heard that Mu Yu was going to set up a protective mountain array that could resist the attack of the out-of-body stage, he was instantly excited. However, he quickly thought of the terrifying cost of such a protective mountain array, and his old face became very embarrassed. He quickly said, "My lord, the Taoist temple has been damaged to this extent. I'm afraid the next step is to repair the damaged building. I really don't have the spirit stones, it's okay. Since you didn't want to kill me just now, I will give you the spirit stones for free this time," Mu Yu said. Before Mu Yu exposed his cultivation, Mo Ziming had asked the South Star Taoist Temple to kill him. However, the South Star Taoist Temple wanted to protect Mu Yu and leave this place. Mu Yu was very impressed with his character. The South Star Taoist Temple was an upright person. He was worthy of Mu Yu's help. Really? The South Star Taoist Temple was stunned for a moment. He was very glad that he had made such an important decision. If he had chosen to kill Mu Yu in order to survive, he was afraid that he would be lying on the ground like He Tianqiang. The South Star Taoist Temple was very grateful. He knelt down again and said, "Thank you, my lord." Mu Yu helped him up and then walked to He Tianqiang's body. This old man did not know what a stupid thing he had done. He thought that he would benefit from helping Mo Ziming destroy the South Star Taoist Temple. He did not know that he was just a tool that would be killed after being used. He Tianqiang's death was not to be regretted for helping the tyrant. He squatted down and broke He Tianqiang's heaven and earth sleeve formation. He took out all his belongings. It had to be said that He Tianqiang, as the leader of a sect, had a lot of wealth. However, most of these spirit stones didn't catch Mu Yu's eye. He finally found the spirit talisman that he was looking for in the pile of spirit stones. Chapter 426. I didn't expect He Tianqiang to be so rich. Even the Southern Star Monastery's dean was shocked by the amount of spirit stones He Tianqiang had. At least, He Tianqiang was much richer than him. He even saw several Yuan Qi gathering pills, which were very tempting for nascent soul stage cultivators. He Tianqiang had taken the Yuan Qi gathering pills and destroyed his mountain guarding formation. The ability to reach the out-of-body stage in 15 minutes was enough for nascent soul stage cultivators to do many things. As for the side effect of the pill, all nascent soul stage cultivators were willing to accept such trivial side effects, such as vomiting and diarrhea the next day. However, the Southern Star Monastery's dean had no intention of taking it for himself. What happened just now had made him understand how important it was to be an upright person. Although these things looked tempting, they were obtained by Mu Yu and had nothing to do with him. However, Mu Yu was already satisfied with finding the soul talisman. He planned to deal with the mountain guarding formation. The Southern Star Monastery's dean saw that Mu Yu had already walked to the eye of the mountain guarding formation and neglected a large pile of spirit stones. He quickly reminded him, "My lord, you forgot to take these spirit stones." Mu Yu glanced at the spirit stones casually. There were about 150,000 spirit stones. He said, "These are for you. I don't need them." It was not that he was generous or anything. The Southern Star Taoist Temple was a victim in this incident. The entire temple was almost destroyed. Mu Yu felt sorry in his heart. In addition, the Southern Star Monastery's dean was indeed an upright person, so he wanted to make it up to him. "My lord, you can't do this. You helped me defeat a strong enemy and are willing to set up a mountain guarding formation that can resist out-of-body stage cultivators. I will never forget your kindness. How can I covet these spirit stones?" The Southern Star Monastery's dean shook his head and said. He was clearly aware of what he should and shouldn't take. He wasn't an idiot. Since the moment the members of the Talisman sect wanted him to kill Mu Yu, he'd faintly guessed that the calamity that befell his Taoist temple was probably related to this young man. However, Mu Yu was already willing to help him set up a protective formation that could resist out-of-body stage cultivators for free. The value of this protective formation was more than enough to make up for the loss of the Taoist temple, so he dared not ask for more. "All right, I'll take these for you to use as the base of the protective mountain array." Mu Yu smiled. With a wave of his hand, all the spirit stones were swept away. Mu Yu didn't say much. He wasn't that rich. Setting up a protective formation that could withstand an attack from an out-of-body stage cultivator did indeed require a lot of spirit stones. Although he didn't lack spirit stones, it didn't mean that he could squander spirit stones as he pleased. Naturally, these spirit stones had to be used on the protective formation. In truth, to construct a mountain barrier formation that was capable of withstanding leaving aperture stage cultivators, 150,000 high-tier spirit stones was just a drop in the bucket. However, Zhang Xian had already figured out how to set up the formation. Master Lu had given him so many second-hand innate formation bases. In Mu Yu's eyes, these things were now a pile of junk. After spending so much effort to refine them, he couldn't use them after using them twice. What a scam! However, although they were second-hand goods, they were still innate formation bases. They were only used to set up a formation, so the consumption of spirit stones was relatively low. They were not used to fight like Mu Yu. The consumption of spirit stones for fighting and setting up a formation were two different concepts. He only needed to use 8 pieces of innate formation bases to set up a protective mountain array that could withstand out-of-body stage cultivators' attack. Using innate formation bases to set up a protective mountain array was usually only seen in large sections. How could a small sect like the Southern Star Taoist Temple have the money to use innate formation bases? If it was not attacked by out-of-body stage cultivators, the protective mountain array could last for at least 5 years. If it was attacked by out-of-body stage cultivators, it should be able to resist for at least 1 day. 1 day was enough for them to do a lot of things. The people who were controlled by the Soul Talisman had not woken up yet. The Southern Star Taoist Temple Master needed to take care of his disciples. Mu Yu began to study the Soul Talisman after setting up the protective mountain array. He was not worried that the people from the Talisman sect would return to the Southern Star Daoist temple and kill them. This was because Mo Ziming did not kill Mu Yu and the others, which meant that their identities had been exposed. It would be unwise for them to return and kill the people from the Southern Star Daoist temple. The Array faction and the Talisman sect were currently in a state of mutual hostility. If the Array faction spread the news that the Talisman sect killed them, it would be a huge blow to the Talisman sect's reputation. They could shirk away from today's incident because of the conflict between the Southern Star Daoist temple and the Yunhe sect. The Talisman sect and the Array faction were just coincidentally involved in this conflict. He Tianxiang's death was not a big deal. However, the death of an entire sect was different. Therefore, they could not kill them. Many sects knew about the relationship between the Array faction and the Talisman sect. They would not condemn them and would only make the Array faction angry. Mu Yu observed the Soul Talisman carefully. This was the first time he had come into contact with the Talisman paper from the Talisman sect. The Talisman paper was made from precious Array foundations. A piece of Talisman paper was equivalent to an Array foundation. However, every Talisman paper was inscribed with Talisman patterns. It was easier to use it in battle or to set up a small array. Although the Talisman paper was small in size, it was also very nimble. However, the same Array foundation would definitely be more effective if it was made into Talisman paper and used directly. The process of making Talisman paper would cause the Array foundation to lose part of its spiritual energy. It could be said that Array techniques and Talisman techniques each had their own merit. It was hard to say which one was better. He injected his spiritual energy into the Soul Talisman. There was a space array engraved on the Soul Talisman. It was very similar to the most basic heaven and earth array formation of the self-cultivators. The space array did not reject Mu Yu's spiritual energy. Soon, the entire Talisman paper lit up. Then, a wave of energy was transmitted into Mu Yu's mind. Mu Yu slowly figured out the characteristics of the Soul Talisman. This Soul Talisman could not be used to control others in the hands of Mu Yu because it lacked a core. The Soul Talisman was divided into the main talisman and the auxiliary talisman. There could be many auxiliary talismans, but only one main talisman. If the auxiliary talisman wanted to control people, the user's spiritual energy cultivation must be much higher than the person being controlled. The auxiliary talisman could be activated by spiritual energy and touched the self-cultivator's body. When the self-cultivator was touched by the auxiliary talisman, unless the self-cultivator's cultivation was much higher than the owner of the main talisman would take control of the body. This was the same as the slave pill. Needless to say, the main talisman was with Mo Ziming. He Tianxiang was only the one who helped him to put the auxiliary talisman on the disciples of Nanxing Taoist Temple. However, when Mu Yu checked the auxiliary talisman, he found a small green branch in the space array of the auxiliary talisman. What is this? Mu Yu took out the thumb-sized branch. When he touched the branch, he suddenly understood the function of the branch. Soul wood. Mu Yu was surprised. He could control plants and had a lot of information about plants in his mind. However, the soul wood was in a forgotten corner. If he did not touch this small branch, he would not even know the existence of this kind of tree. The soul wood was a very powerful plant. It knew how to hunt. Once a demonic beast or a human accidentally touched it, it would quickly split into small branches and pierce into the prey's meridians. It would completely restrict the prey's body and make them unable to move. Then, it would gradually absorb the prey. It did not secrete venom to paralyze the prey. Instead, it controlled the prey's body. It could even control the prey to walk to a suitable position and attach more soul wood to it. However, this kind of plant was very rare. It had a strong sense of self-protection. It was very difficult for humans to find it. Or rather, some humans found it, but because they were careless and attached to it, they basically became its nutrient. The soul talisman obviously used this kind of plant's ability to control self-cultivators through the talisman technique. This talisman technique was really powerful. Could the soul wood be one of the ingredients for the slave pill? Muyu thought of the slave pill that her master had invented in order to control Yumeng demon clan. But later, she discovered that the slave pill could not control Yumeng. It was most likely because God's soul wood was a wood attribute object of the 5 elements. It was ineffective against Yumeng. Since the soul wood had such a terrifying ability, should he consider using it rationally? Muyu thought of the spies sent by the Talisman faction to the Array faction. They were very likely to work together during the Talisman Array competition to destroy the Array faction. If Muyu could use the soul wood to control these people, then everything would be much easier. But where should I find the soul wood? Muyu tried to stimulate the growth of this small piece of soul wood. However, its vitality had been completely sealed. It would lose its effect if it left the talisman paper. Moreover, Muyu had just injected spiritual energy into the soul talisman. If it did not successfully attach to the self-cultivator, it would burn itself after a while. Stupid! Have you forgotten about that stupid sword? Xiao Shui reminded him. Muyu knocked his head. Mu Ling could transform into all kinds of plant. As long as Muyu could give the prototype, Mu Ling could replicate it. Naturally, the soul wood was not a problem. He took out the shadow clone sword. With a light shake, Mu Ling appeared from the shadow clone sword. Get me some divine soul wood. Muyu held the Mu Ling. The aura of the soul wood had already appeared in his mind. With a thought, many crisscrossing branches split out of the Mu Ling and swayed gently in the air. Just as Mu Yu's hand approached these thin branches, the branches seemed to come alive. They split into many curled branches and sprouted to surround Mu Yu's fingers. Motherf *Ker, how dare you lay your hands on me? Mu Yu cursed. The branches and sprouts had just burrowed into Mu Yu's skin when they touched Mu Yu's blood. Let me see. Xiao Shui, I'll experiment on you. The soul wood was naturally ineffective on Muyu. Moreover, he was the one controlling himself. No, my skin is so thick. It's nothing. You'd better look for a caterpillar. Xiao Shui said proudly. Thick skin was the thing he was most proud of. My original form is a plant. How can a plant control me? Dragon Vine said lazily. Muyu shook his head helplessly. He really couldn't count on these 2 fellows. He thought about it and set his target on the 3 unconscious people next door. Muyu broke off a section of the soul wood. Then, Muyu placed it on Ma Mingxuan's body. Soon, the branches and sprouts of the soul wood invaded Ma Mingxuan's body. Muyu immediately felt as if he had obtained a puppet. Ma Mingxuan abruptly opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. You can't see me. Muyu realized that he could control Ma Mingxuan's consciousness and gave him a strange order. Ma Mingxuan stood up and patted his head. He didn't even blink when he looked at Muyu. He didn't see Muyu at all. He opened the door and walked out. When he saw the mess in the Southern Star Taoist temple, his expression changed. He shouted, "That's right, people from the Talisman Grandmaster. Something happened to Feng Mu." Chapter 427. When Ma Mingxuan was controlled by Mo Ziming's divine soul talisman, he was like a walking corpse. He didn't even have his own basic consciousness. This was because the divine soul talisman wasn't able to fully display the characteristics of the divine soul would like Muyu. At this moment, Ma Mingxuan was like an ant on a hot pan. He looked everywhere for Feng Mu. He walked past Mu Yu several times, but he did not find him. Master, you're awake? What are you looking for? The Southern Star Monastery's dean saw Ma Mingxuan running around and did not understand what happened. He quickly walked over and asked, Where is Feng Mu? I brought the disciple with the lowest cultivation. Where did he go? Ma Mingxuan looked very anxious. Before he came out, he knew what Mu Yu meant to the sect. If something happened to Mu Yu, the sect's late master would definitely punish him. He would not be able to absolve himself from the blame. That was why he panicked. Isn't Master Feng Mu over there? The Southern Star Monastery's dean was at a loss after being yelled at by Ma Mingxuan. He clearly saw Mu Yu standing aside and thinking about something. Was there something wrong with his eyes? Why don't we ask him to dance? Xiao Shui also thought it was fun and could not wait to make a suggestion. Dance. A strange dance appeared in Mu Yu's mind. Then, Ma Mingxuan really danced according to his idea. The Southern Star Monastery's dean was shocked. Who would have thought that an out-of-body stage master would dance awkwardly and dance in front of him without any grace? His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Ha ha ha! Xiao Shui lay on Mu Yu's head and laughed. Mu Yu also laughed until he was out of breath. The Southern Star Monastery's dean quickly walked over to Mu Yu and asked anxiously, Master Feng Mu, why is your disciple dancing? Dancing shows that his legs are nimble. Dean, you are already so old. You should also dance. Mu Yu tried hard to hold back his laughter. He patted the Southern Star Monastery's dean on the shoulder and hurriedly asked Ma Mingxuan to return to his room. Dance, this. The Southern Star Monastery's abbot was a serious person, so he was at a loss for words after hearing Mu Yu's suggestion. However, Mu Yu had already placed the other piece of Godsoul wood on his arm. Soon, Mu Yu grasped the Southern Star Monastery's entire consciousness. Forget about what happened just now and then go do your own things. Mu Yu discovered that the divine soul wood could even control the memories of these people, which was truly awesome. The Southern Star Monastery's dean's eyes lost focus for a moment before he regained his senses. When he saw Mu Yu, he hurriedly said respectfully, Greetings, my lord. Then, he seemed to be puzzled as to why he was here, but he quickly remembered that he still had a lot of things to do, so he left. Mu Yu had already retrieved the Divine Soul Wood from the Southern Star Monastery's abbot. The Divine Soul Wood's miraculous effects were simply heaven-defying. It seemed to be very easy to tamper with one's memories. Even removing a person's control would not be a problem. However, it seemed that he could only erase memories of the first 2 hours. Memories that were longer could not be erased at all, which was his only regret. Then, he thought for a moment and used the Divine Soul Wood to awaken the unconscious consciousness of all the people in the Taoist temple. Then, he left the Southern Star Taoist temple with Ma Mingxuan and the other two and returned to the Array faction. Ma Mingxuan kept asking Mu Yu how he avoided this disaster. Mu Yu said that he relied on a maze to pretend to be killed and successfully deceived Mo Ziming from the Talisman sect. Ma Mingxuan actually believed him and even praised Mu Yu's wit. There was a small town 100 miles north of the Southern Star Taoist temple. At this moment, a figure hurriedly appeared in the town. This person was Mo Ziming from the Talisman sect. Mo Ziming's face was full of resentment. He was originally a Supreme Immortal on the Supreme Immortal list, but he had actually lost to a nobody from the Array faction, which made him lose face. He walked into a small courtyard. Zhou Jinglin was sitting on a chair in the courtyard, drinking tea and waiting for him. Is the matter settled? Zhou Jinglin asked without raising his head. Mo Ziming's face was gloomy. He was a proud person. He originally thought that this mission to assassinate a disciple of the Array faction from the Jindan period would be a sure thing, but he never expected that he would encounter an accident. No, he escaped. Mo Ziming gritted his teeth and said. He was the 71st Supreme Immortal. Whether it was in the Talisman sect or in the cultivation world, his talent was outstanding. It was worse than death for him to admit that he was defeated by a nobody. Escaped? A person from the Jindan period can escape from your hands? Zhou Jinglin frowned. Mo Ziming didn't want to tell the truth. After all, this was related to his dignity. He pondered for a while and said, "There was a Sciention Array Master at the Spirit Severing stage protecting him. I am not a match for a Sciention Array Master at the Spirit Severing stage." He was an out-of-body stage cultivator. If he fabricated a Spirit Severing stage cultivator to help Fengmu, then he could cover up his failure. No one would gossip if an out-of-body stage cultivator couldn't defeat a spirit-severing stage cultivator, but it wasn't certain if an out-of-body stage cultivator couldn't defeat an out-of-body stage cultivator. For his reputation, Mo Ziming chose to lie. Zhou Jinglin turned the teacup and the tea slightly swayed. A spirit-severing stage Sciention Array Master, it must be Lu Dei without a doubt. Thinking about it, how could the Array faction allow anything to happen to Fengmu? The next time he goes out to the field, I will definitely kill him. Even a Sciention Array Master can't protect him. Mo Ziming said fiercely. The failure of this mission is equivalent to alerting the enemy. Lu Dei will definitely not let him go out to the field. But don't worry, this year's Talisman Array competition is the highlight. Even if he becomes a Sciention disciple, he won't be able to do anything. The destruction of the Array faction is inevitable. A ruthless light appeared in Zhou Jinglin's eyes. His entire body was shrouded in a murderous aura. His sinister smile made people tremble in fear. Mo Ziming snorted. He didn't say that Mu Yu was at the out-of-body stage. The arrogant him didn't want to admit that he couldn't defeat an out-of-body Array Master. Otherwise, once this matter spread out, his reputation would be questioned by others. Fengmu, just you wait. The next time we meet, I will definitely kill you. Mo Ziming swore that he would definitely take revenge for the humiliation of this failure. That brat Fengmu must be dead, right? Duan Yang said indignantly. I really want to personally see how that brat died. At the same time, I can take revenge on him before I die. He has been ordering me around like a dog for a while. It's really aggrieving. Save it. If we participate in his assassination, it's very likely that we will ruin the plan. We still need to endure for a few more months. Wu Wenxing was rather open-minded. Duan Yang waved his fist and glanced at Mu Yu's bed. He really wanted to burn Mu Yu's things with fire. However, he held himself back. Now wasn't the time. He had to wait for the news of Mu Yu's death before he could make a move. He said, he deserved to die. A piece of trash from the Jindan period dared to ride on our heads. He even wanted to go against senior brother Luo and senior brother Ji. He must be tired of living. Fengmu is already dead. A voice suddenly rang in Duan Yang's ears. Really? Duan Yang's face instantly revealed an unconcealable excitement. Fengmu is finally dead? That's great. Wu Wenxing, how did you know? I told him. Mu Yu's harmless face instantly appeared in front of Duan Yang. He looked at Duan Yang and Wu Wenxing with a faint smile. What? Mu Yu's silent appearance scared the two of them. They almost jumped up. Duan Yang asked in disbelief, How can you still be alive? Should I be dead? Mu Yu sat back on his bed leisurely. He had just returned to the Array faction. Ma Mingxuan had already reported to his late master about the Talisman Sect's attack. He had returned here to give Duan Yang and Wu Wenxing a surprise. No, we didn't say anything. We were just saying that it's great that you're back. Wu Wenxing reacted faster than Duan Yang. He quickly put on a fake smile and pulled Duan Yang hard at the same time. Duan Yang gritted his teeth and forced a smile. Yes. We were thinking of what else we could do for junior brother Fengmu. Of course, I still have some things that I need you to do. Mu Yu chuckled. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. Please tell us, junior brother Fengmu. We'll do our best to help junior brother Mu Yu do it. Wu Wenxing cursed in his heart, but he still smiled fawningly. It's very simple. Just give me a list of all the spies from the Talisman sect. Mu Yu said casually. Duan Yang and Wu Wenxing's expressions immediately stiffened. They had never expected Mu Yu to suddenly say such a thing. As spies from the Talisman sect, they had always carefully concealed this matter, and had never exposed it. How did Feng Mu find out about it? Spies from the Talisman sect? Feng Mu, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand? Wu Wenxing's face twitched. Mu Yu's words had shocked them greatly. Who's a spy from the Talisman sect? Our Array faction and the Talisman sect are sworn enemies. How could there be a spy from the Talisman sect in the sect? Duan Yang hurriedly asked. Someone told me that the two of you are spies from the Talisman sect. I didn't really believe it, so I came back to ask. Are the two of you spies from the Talisman sect? Mu Yu suddenly thought of a prank. Of course not. We're upright disciples of the Array faction. How could we be spies from the Talisman sect? Duan Yang smiled. I remember that the spies from the Talisman sect are a bunch of uneducated, low intelligence, and a little stupid. They're idiots who would bark to please others when they're ordered around like dogs. Don't you think so? Mu Yu said deliberately. Yes, yes. Wu Wenxing's face flushed red. It was obvious that he was referring to the two of them. Yes, my ass. Duan Yang could no longer hold it in. His figure flashed and his fist was already aimed at Mu Yu. He had been suppressing a bellyful of anger since he was ordered around by someone whose cultivation level was lower than his. At this moment, Mu Yu's words had completely enraged him. He had already thought about it. Since Feng Mu had returned unscathed, there must be a flaw in the assassination plan. As long as he killed Feng Mu, he would immediately escape from the Array faction. The Array faction would definitely reward him generously. With his nascent soul stage strength, he was confident that he could beat Feng Mu during the Jindan period into a meat patty. However, he had forgotten one thing. The Array faction had sent Mo Zimming to assassinate Mu Yu, but he had been chased away by Mu Yu. What was a mere nascent soul stage like him to do? Without any fancy moves, a hand stretched out and blocked his fist. Duan Yang was shocked to find that his fist had been grabbed by Feng Mu and could no longer move forward. He raised his head in horror and met Mu Yu's deep gaze. He was shocked. This kid was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. However, it was too late now. He only felt his fist go numb, as if something tentacle-like had stuck to it. He wanted to use his spiritual energy to resist, but Mu Yu's spiritual energy had completely suppressed him. Then, his mind went blank, as if he had fallen into a white fog, and he didn't know anything. Mu Yu's eyes flashed and he looked at Wu Wenxing. Wu Wenxing exclaimed, "You're in the out-of-body stage? Who are you?" "I'm here to punish spies." Mu Yu's lips curled up slightly. He had already arrived behind Wu Wenxing. The god's soul would had already stuck to Wu Wenxing's neck, making him unable to move. Chapter 428. The divine soul wood in Mu Yu's hands was much more powerful than the divine soul talismans of the Talisman Grandmaster. In the Array sect, I only know of Luo Feilong, Ji Wenkai, and Duan Yang. I don't know the names of the others, Wu Wenxing said expressionlessly. How can you not know? Haven't you met before? Mu Yu frowned. We meet every 3 months to discuss the next step of the plan. However, in order to prevent one of us from revealing our identity and implicating the others, no one will show their true faces. Therefore, we don't know which Zhongtian disciples are on our side. Everyone only knows Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai. Only the two of them have an accurate name list in our hand. We only listen to their orders, Wu Wenxing said. Then if something happens to one of you, won't it implicate Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai? Mu Yu asked. Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai both have perfect backgrounds. They will just deny that we are framing them. With their identities in the Array sect, the people in the Array sect will only believe them and not us. Mu Yu suddenly understood. Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai both had very high positions in the Zhongtian disciples of the Array sect. Their talents were also the best, and they were highly regarded by the late master. If the spies wanted to expose them, the late master would indeed treat the spies' words as framing them. The Talisman Grandmaster's move was indeed brilliant. The more spies they sent, the higher the possibility of their identities being exposed. Therefore, everyone's identities were kept secret. Only Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai knew. This way, even if one of the disciples' identities was exposed, the others would be safe. As long as Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai were fine, there was no need to worry about the others. Then how did the two of you know each other's identities? Mu Yu asked. Duan Yang and I knew each other in the Talisman Grandmaster. Therefore, when we were sent here to carry out the mission, we naturally knew each other, Wu Wenxing said honestly. Mu Yu pondered for a while. Since he couldn't get the list of other spies from Duan Yang and Wu Wenxing, he could only start from Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai. However, Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai were in control of the true identities of all the spies. If anything happened to them, it would implicate the others. It was impossible for Fu Zong to not know this. He must have put some kind of protective measures on them to prevent the list from being leaked. If Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai are caught, won't all of you be finished? Mu Yu needed to get to the bottom of this matter before he went to find Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai. A talisman technique of our talisman sect has been planted in their bodies, and it's called God Annihilation. Once they're interrogated or controlled, the rest of us will immediately find out from the God Annihilation talisman. Moreover, we can directly rely on this God Annihilation talisman to kill the two of them. Wu Wenxing withdrew a yellow talisman paper and spoke. Mu Yu was slightly shocked. All the spies had the God-slaying talisman that could kill Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai? So you're saying that you can use this talisman to kill them now? Mu Yu felt that it was very strange. What if one of the spies wanted to clear their names and directly killed the two of them? I can't kill them alone. At least 21 God Annihilation talismans have been activated in order to kill the two of them. I also don't dare to casually activate these God Annihilation talismans. Once I activate the God Annihilation talisman, everyone will know. If the situation is not true, I will be killed by the God Annihilation talisman as punishment. What a ruthless method! Mu Yu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. In order to obtain the foundation of the Array faction, the Talisman sect had really put in a lot of effort. First, they sent Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai to suppress the rise of all the Zhongtian disciples in the Array faction. Then, they used mutual restrictions to ensure that their identities wouldn't be easily exposed. All the spies had to listen to Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai's orders. However, they didn't know their identities and only had a communication talisman as a token. And once something happened to Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai, all the spies had the right to kill them. It was really foolproof. The most important point was that for so many years, not a single spy in the Array faction had exposed themselves. This showed how good their secrecy was. This was quite troublesome. He could use the Divine Soul Wood to control Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai, but he was worried that he would activate the talisman technique in their bodies. All the spies would know that something unexpected had happened and it was very likely that they would kill the two of them. Then why don't the rest of you have the God Annihilation talisman on you? Mu Yu asked. If Duan Yang and Wu Wenxing had the God Annihilation talisman on them, then Mu Yu's current questioning would be in vain. The God Annihilation talisman is a very powerful innate talisman technique, because it can kill people from 1,000 miles away, and the talisman pattern is engraved on each person's body. This method is very complicated and exhausting, so we don't have this kind of talisman technique on us. Duan Yang answered honestly. Mu Yu nodded thoughtfully. Fortunately, they didn't plant this kind of talisman technique on the other spies. Otherwise, Mu Yu wouldn't have been able to find out about this situation at all. The talisman sect's method of sending spies was perfect. Even the spies didn't know the other spies, only Luo Filong and Ji Wenkai. This way, even if they were exposed, they would only lose a few spies and not all of them. But they would never have thought that Mu Yu would have such a heaven-defying method of controlling the divine soul would, and even successfully steal the talisman sect's scheme. Mu Yu pondered for a moment. Since he couldn't directly attack Luo Filong and Ji Wenkai, he could only sneak into their gathering and find out more about their situation in detail. He asked, "When is the next gathering?" "In 2 months, because we have to start discussing how to cooperate with the outside and take the Array faction by surprise in the talisman competition," Wu Wenxing said. The talisman sect wanted to attack the Array faction in this year's talisman competition. This scheme had been planned for a long time, but it was discovered by Mu Yu. Now that Mu Yu wanted to find all the spies, how to get the list of spies had become an important problem. However, he still had a question. After all, the Array faction was a big sect. There were hundreds of culmination disciples and culmination array masters, and thousands of Hotian disciples and Hotian array masters. There were also many complex and mysterious formations in the Array faction. How could it be so easily destroyed by these 57 spies? How can you 57 spies overthrow the Array faction that has thousands of people? Mu Yu believed that the talisman sect must have some kind of backing. Among the Hotian disciples of the Array faction, there are more than 100 of them who are from our talisman sect. The Hotian disciples are mixed in with the good and the bad. They also have a few powerful leaders who are from our talisman sect. They are suppressing those who are slightly talented, Duan Yang said. Not only were there spies among the culmination disciples, but there were also countless spies among the Hotian disciples. The Array faction was in imminent danger. However, the Hotian disciples of the talisman sect were insignificant. The most important thing was still the culmination disciples. You spies didn't enter the Array faction purely to suppress the disciples of the Array faction, right? What other secrets of the Array faction have you found out? Mu Yu continued to ask. The purpose of us disciples entering the Array faction is to figure out the method to break all the defensive formations of the Array faction. We also know the geographical distribution of the entire Array faction. After so many years of preparation, we have finally figured out the weaknesses of the entire Array faction. When it comes to the talisman competition, the people of the talisman sect only need to give an order. Then, we can let our fellow disciples of the talisman sect barge in without any hindrance and seize the entire Array faction. Wu Wenxing's face revealed an excited expression. As a disciple of the talisman sect, he was naturally looking forward to becoming the hero of the destruction of the Array faction. The spies had to endure the pressure of having their identities exposed every day. They were looking forward to the day when their suffering was over. Even so, how are you going to deal with the 20 Xiantian array masters of the Array faction? All of them are at least at the separating spirit or unification stage. One of them is enough to deal with all the culmination disciples. If the talisman sect wants to seize the foundation of the Array faction from them, it will be impossible without paying a terrible price. Mu Yu knew that the talisman sect had twice as many Xiantian array masters as the Array faction. However, Mu Yu also knew a little more about the terrain of the talisman sect. It was easy to defend and hard to attack. If the talisman sect wanted to attack, they would have to deal with the 20 Xiantian array masters first. The array techniques of the Xiantian array masters were not something that the spies of the culmination disciples could figure out. In a battle within their own sect, the array techniques that the Xiantian array masters could control were naturally much stronger than the Xiantian array masters. We are already a subsidiary sect of the Stargate. They will help us deal with the Xiantian array masters of the Array faction and the mysterious Array Heavenly Tao. Wu Wenxing sneered proudly. Stargate! Muyu was stunned. Then, he clenched his fists and hatred swept over him again. The things that Tian Bue did to him appeared in front of his eyes again, making him almost unable to suppress his anger. However, he gradually calmed down. He was nothing now. He was so insignificant in the Array faction. How could he fight against the Stargate? He was lucky that the En Corps formation didn't kill Tian Bue. He wasn't surprised that the Talisman sect had chosen to side with the Stargate. After all, Zhou Jinglin had treated Tian Bue so humbly that it was despicable. Thinking back, the Talisman sect used to be in existence on par with the Stargate. Although they had split into the Talisman sect and the Talisman sect due to different daos, their influence had weakened. Yet, the Talisman sect's sect master had actually lowered his face to side with the Stargate. Didn't he feel ashamed? With the help of the Stargate, the Array faction wouldn't be able to avoid being wiped out even if they had the Array Heavenly Dao. So this was what Zhou Jinglin meant when he said that the Array Heavenly Dao couldn't even protect itself. Why would the Stargate suddenly get involved in the conflict between the Array faction and the Talisman sect? Muyu fell into deep thought. What did it mean for the Stargate to take over the Array faction? The Array faction had always been stronger than the Talisman sect. The rise of the Talisman sect was only a matter of recent years. It was probably because they had sided with the Stargate that they started to surpass the Array faction. Most of the Array factions on the three continents were designed by the Array faction and the Talisman sect. Now that the Stargate had secretly subdued the Talisman sect, if they were to subdue the Array faction as well, wouldn't it mean that all the Array factions were useless in front of the Stargate? Could it be that the Stargate wanted to conquer the entire three continent? Muyu sucked in a breath of cold air. If that was really the case, the water was too deep. The three continent is the world of the three palace. What right does the Stargate have to go against the three palace? Muyu quickly overturned his thoughts. The three palace wouldn't let the Stargate dominate the three continent. The three palace methods had killed the Danding sect's Deadwood, and the Danding sect didn't dare to say anything. The Stargate didn't have the right to go against the three palace. But what if the threefold palace is secretly supporting the Heavenly Star sect? When Muyu said this, even he didn't believe it. The threefold palace had long been the master of the threefold continent. No other sect would dare to oppose them, so why would they need to support the Heavenly Star sect? Muyu couldn't figure it out. He felt that things weren't that complicated. Maybe the Stargate just wanted to subdue the Array faction and the Talisman sect? But no matter what, Muyu couldn't just sit by and watch the Stargate subdue the Array faction. Originally, he only helped the Array faction because he wanted to see the Array Heavenly Dao. But now that he thought about it, there seemed to be another reason. The heavens won't wait. You killed my Deadwood father, so how could I let your plan succeed so easily? Chapter 429. Feng Mu, are you alright? Master Lu rushed in energetically. He had heard Ma Mingxuan's report and had rushed over anxiously in a fit of rage. Mu Yu's killing intent towards the Talisman Grandmaster was gradually suppressed. When he saw Master Lu, he felt rather helpless. This deceitful fellow actually knew how to care about his safety. Originally, he wanted to rely on his array skills and talisman skills to fight against the Talisman Grandmaster. Unfortunately, he was played to death by the second-hand innate array foundation. I'm fine. Can I still be here if I'm not fine? Muyu said politely to Master Lu. Master Lu heaved a sigh of relief and said, the Talisman Grandmaster actually did such a shameless thing. I will definitely seek an explanation from them for this matter. This is so infuriating. You are not allowed to leave the Array sect in the future, so as not to give them another chance. Damn it, I finally have a second innate stage disciple. How can I let them ruin it? Master, are the innate array foundations you gave me second-hand goods that you used? Mu Yu asked helplessly. When Master Lu heard this, he was slightly stunned. Then, he said embarrassedly, that was indeed used by me. However, I feel that these innate array foundations are enough for you to practice arrays thousands of times during the Jindan period. What's wrong? You can't have used up all these innate array foundations, right? By the way, how did you escape from death? Ma Mingxuan said that you escaped through an illusion array? Oh my God, I used the innate array foundations you gave me to set up a powerful illusion array. In this illusion array, I created another version of myself, who was killed by Mo Ziming of the Talisman Grandmaster. I was about to deceive him, but the spiritual chi of the array foundations you gave me was used up at this time. I almost exposed myself. If I didn't use other array foundations to make up for it in time, I'm afraid I would be dead. Mu Yu made up a story. What? Master Lu's face turned pale. Only now did he know that the innate array foundations he gave him had almost caused a disaster. He immediately felt guilty and said, "It's all my fault, really. Fortunately, you're talented. It's all my fault." Master Lu took out 10 innate formation bases and handed them to Mu Yu. He said solemnly, "These are all things I have never used before. I can't let the same thing happen again. Take them." F*CK. Master Lu is really F*King generous. Mu Yu touched these innate array bases and felt the huge amount of spiritual energy contained in them. Compared to his second-hand goods, this was a world of difference. "Thank you for your concern, Master Lu." Mu Yu unceremoniously accepted this gift. No matter what, he still had to help the array faction, so it wasn't too much to ask for a fee. Master Lu looked at those array bases and still felt some heartache. However, thinking of Mu Yu's talent, he could be considered to have thrown caution to the wind and said, "In the future, you are not allowed to go anywhere. I will give you a closed-door training. Oh right, I'm going to take you to meet some people now, and we'll properly explain the filthy matters of the Talisman sect. We'll absolutely not let them off this time." "See who?" Mu Yu asked, puzzled. "The other masters of the array faction, and our sect master." Master Lu said. The sect master of the array faction, Zhuge Shaoxing, was known as the second master of the array faction. Mu Yu was slightly shocked. This was something he didn't want to face the most. In front of a group of spirit-severing and body-integration stage masters, he had to be careful with his words and actions. However, at the same time, he also knew that he would encounter this matter sooner or later. When he decided to show his talent, he would definitely be noticed by the other innate array masters. "Yes, master." Mu Yu couldn't refuse. Kai Lai had already arranged his identity, so he was more at ease with Kai Lai's work. Master Lu took him to the sky and flew towards the core of the array faction. The terrain of the array faction was divided into 3 layers. The outermost layer was the active area of the Houtian disciples, the middle was the residence of the Zhongtian disciples, and the core was generally not allowed to approach except for Xiantian disciples and Xiantian array masters. The array faction had a separate forbidden area that wasn't in the core area. It was said that this was the place where the array faction's patriarch cultivated in seclusion. A powerful array formation blocked everyone outside. When flying in the array faction, one could only see valleys and endless forests. The entire array faction was protected by a huge array formation. Only array masters knew how to find the exact location. Master Lu stopped in front of a forest full of vitality. His 2 fingers moved slightly, sending out a wave of spirit energy that merged into the void, causing waves of ripples. Then, the ripples gradually emitted a golden light. The entire forest seemed to come alive. Every tree began to move automatically, revealing an elegant palace. These buildings were noble and dignified. Array patterns surrounded them, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Mu Yu saw a majestic palace at a glance. It emitted a moonlight and was incomparably sacred. The surrounding buildings were distributed around it like stars surrounding the moon. This palace was called the Array Palace. It was the foundation of the entire Array faction. It was said that it was the strongest fortress. It gathered the most profound array formation in the world and no power could break it. Normally, it was just an ordinary meeting palace. However, if there was a life or death crisis, it would use a spatial array to accommodate all the disciples of the Array faction. However, the array formation of the Array faction was too mysterious. Ordinary sects couldn't break in at all. Only the Talisman faction, who knew the foundation of the Array faction, would make a move against them. Let's go. Master Lu led Mu Yu towards the palace. Mu Yu followed closely behind. He saw the stairs of the Array Palace in front of him. There was nothing special about it. However, when he got close to the stairs, a soul-stirring aura surrounded him. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on his heart, causing his mind to tremble involuntarily. This heavy feeling only lasted for a breath and disappeared in the blink of an eye. However, Mu Yu no longer had the mood to underestimate this place. In front of the Array Palace, he was so insignificant. If he had the slightest bit of evil intent, he didn't doubt that he would be instantly destroyed by the array formation of the Array Palace. The Array Palace is a very magical place. Not everyone is qualified to enter the Array Palace. Everyone has to go through a flight of stairs. When the time comes, you will understand. Master Lu smiled as a sly glint flashed in his eyes. I will wait for you in the palace. Master Lu stepped onto the first step, and then his entire person suddenly disappeared in front of him. There were no fluctuations of breaking the void, nor were there any ripples of formation runes. He just disappeared like that, causing Mu Yu to frown. He hesitated for a moment before also stepping onto the first step. In an instant, the scenery around him suddenly changed. It was as if he was high up in the sky. The stairs in front of him had already started to disperse. Every section was separated by a certain distance, and they were arranged one step at a time. The array hall at the top was already floating high up in the sky, and was out of reach. The most annoying thing was that Mu Yu suddenly found that the spiritual energy in his body couldn't circulate. The second step was a long distance away. Mu Yu couldn't reach it at all. Damn it, are you testing me again? Can't you just meet and I'll greet you senior and you'll praise me as a junior? How straightforward. Why do you have to do this? Mu Yu cursed in a low voice. After entering the Array faction, he had already experienced many mysterious array formations, so he was no longer surprised by these strange array formations. He knew that at this moment there were definitely many pairs of eyes staring at him in secret. They wanted to see if he had the qualifications to become a Xiantian disciple. Mu Yu looked at the second step. It was about 10 meters above him and was slowly floating. 10 meters was actually not far for Mu Yu. With his physical fitness, he could have crossed it in one step. But here, his ability was severely suppressed. He couldn't jump over. He had to think of another way. He tried to stretch out a foot and stepped into the air. There was nothing in the air that he could use to support himself. His foot stepped into the air and he almost fell down. He simply sat on the steps and looked up. Looking at the crisscrossing steps, and then at the dignified array hall in the distance, he fell into deep thought. The array hall was not a place that just anyone could enter. All the Xiantian disciples who entered the array hall for the first time had to go through this heaven stairway. If they didn't have the ability to go through the heaven stairway, then they wouldn't have the qualifications to enter the array hall. This was a rather complicated array. It completely suppressed the abilities of the Xiantian disciples, making them purely rely on their understanding of arrays to break through. Master Lu sat in the array hall, looking at Mu Yu who was not panicking. He nodded slightly. Most Xiantian disciples would be very nervous when they encountered the heaven stairway for the first time. Because their abilities were suppressed, they had nothing to rely on. It was like a tiger that had lost its claws and teeth. But Muyu simply sat down. Without any unnecessary movements, he began to think about how to step onto the heaven stairway. Is he the Zhongtian disciple that you mentioned who had already broken through 2 array tablets? Next to Master Lu was a white-bearded old man in a white robe. He was hale and hearty, with a ruddy complexion. A dignified aura faintly circulated around his body. His every movement caused ripples in the air from time to time. His cultivation was unfathomable, like a true god from the 9 heavens, making people respect him. This old man was the sect leader of the Array faction, the famous Zhuge Shaoxing in the cultivation world. Yes, sect leader, Master Lu said respectfully. Zhuge Shaoxing and Lu Xianshi weren't the only ones here. There were also 17 other Khanate Array masters. They were all sitting in different positions, watching Muyu, who was sitting on the sky stairway with a focused expression. Senior brother Lu, you said that he used his Jindan period cultivation to escape the assassination of Mo Ziming of the Talisman sect? How is that possible? Mo Ziming is the 71st Supreme Immortal on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. How did this kid escape? Another middle-aged man with a red face asked. This man was called Red Water Taoist. He was the youngest of all the Xiantian Array masters present. He was over 60 years old, but he looked younger. He utilized an illusory formation to deceive Mo Ziming. Of course, an accident almost occurred to him because of my negligence. Fortunately, this kid's natural talent is extremely good, and he was able to escape from the Talisman sect's assassination this time. Master Lu spoke with guilt. An illusory array can deceive Mo Ziming? A young woman who looked to be in her 20s frowned. She was actually older than Master Lu. She was also one of the only 3 women among the 19 Xiantian Array masters of the Array faction. Her name was Xia, and people called her Master Xia. I used to teach him how to make illusory arrays look real. His performance at that time almost fooled me. So I think this matter is real. Ma Mingxuan can testify to this. At that time, it was Feng Mu who used an illusory array to save Ma Mingxuan, Master Lu said with a little pride. After all, Mu Yu was a good seedling he had found. Humph! If he can't climb the stairway to heaven, everything will be in vain, an old man with an old-fashioned expression to the right of Master Lu said. Master Lu frowned with dissatisfaction. Obviously, he didn't like this guy. He said, Situ Yangtian, don't be jealous of the person I chose. He will definitely make it to the Array Hall. Humph! I don't believe that he is better than Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai. Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai defeated the Talisman sect in the Array Talisman competition. No matter how powerful Feng Mu is, he is still in the Jindan period. Do you think we can send a disciple in the Jindan period to fight? Do you think our Array faction has no talent? What a joke! Situ Yangtian said rudely. Hey! Although I know you think highly of Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai, it is a fact that they can't crack the Array steel. Feng Mu, on the other hand, did it, Master Lu said indifferently. Stop arguing. Let's see how he is going to climb the stairway to heaven. Zhuge Shaoxing waved his hand to stop the two from arguing. Master Lu and Situ Yangtian tactfully shut their mouths, but they still snorted at each other. Chapter 430. The Stairway to Heaven had a total of 36 sections. Each section was different in length, and they were not stable. They were all slowly floating around in strange orbit. Some of the stairway to heaven only swayed left and right. Some of them tirelessly circled around the Array Hall. There were also some stairway to heaven that suddenly disappeared and reappeared after a while. The first section of the stairway to heaven that Mu Yu was standing on was slowly moving in a zigzag pattern. In the middle, it would twitch nervously as if it was tripped. It would speed up and take 2 steps forward before returning to normal. The array hall in the sky floated there quietly. These stairways to heaven were all surrounding the array hall. They seemed to be spreading downwards. If one wanted to reach the array hall, they had to think of a way to climb up one section at a time. When many people saw these stairways to heaven for the first time, they would be very surprised. After the surprise, they would be shocked by the stairway to heaven under their feet. They would feel as if the stairway to heaven was broken. Then, they would be at a loss when facing the stairway to heaven. These stairways to heaven seemed to be moving in different orbits. There was no order to it at all. Many people did not know how to climb the stairway to heaven. They could not fly or jump. They felt as if they could only follow the first section of the stairway to heaven. The array hall was in the sky. Each section of the stairway to heaven was about 10 meters higher than the previous one. If one wanted to go up, they would have to step on every section of the stairway to heaven. It was impossible to climb up using normal method. However, Mu Yu was a person with high attainments in array formations. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was able to break 2 array tablets. He sat on the first section of the stairway to heaven and carefully observed the moving stairway. After a while, he suddenly understood the mystery of this stairway to heaven. I was wondering why it was so strange. So the mystery is here. Mu Yu's furrowed brows quickly relaxed. He thought to himself that the array hall was indeed a brilliant place. If one did not know how to estimate the length of these stairways to heaven, it would be impossible to find a way to go up based on the orbits of the stairway to heaven. This was because these stairways to heaven moved without any order. They moved randomly. Even if one racked their brains, they would not be able to find any pattern. However, upon closer inspection, one would realize that there were a total of 36 steps. The length of each step was different. They could be divided into long and short steps. These steps were distributed around the array hall. In fact, it was a messy 8 trigrams. The array hall was the yin-yang fish in the center of the 8 trigrams. All the disciples of the array faction knew that there were 8 sides to the 8 trigrams, and each side was made up of lines of different lengths. There were a total of 36 lines. At this moment, there were 36 sections of the stairway to heaven. Mu Yu was on the second section of the stairway to heaven. These stairways to heaven represented each line of the 8 trigrams, but they were arranged at different heights. Only when one stood at the center of the array hall and looked down would one realize that these stairways to heaven would move into the shape of the 8 trigrams. This period of time was extremely short, and only by grasping this short period of time could they think of a way to climb the stairway to heaven. Many people couldn't fly up, so they could only stand on the first step and stare blankly at the irregular staircase. The most helpless thing was that in order to deceive the array faction, when the stairway to heaven moved into the shape of the 8 trigrams, a few of the stairways would turn invisible, making it impossible for people to associate it with the 8 trigrams. Mu Yu was initially deceived by these cunning stairways, but he soon realized that if he imagined the invisible stairways to heaven, he could form a complete 8 trigrams. Although he discovered the pattern of the stairway to heaven and the 8 trigrams, there was still a problem that needed to be solved. The other stairway to heaven was too far away from him. Even if he discovered the pattern, he wouldn't be able to climb it. Since the people of the array faction designed the stairway to heaven as the 8 trigrams, and suppressed the ability of those who climbed the stairway to heaven, there would definitely be a way out. However, this way was too hidden, and he needed to deduce it. The stairway to heaven that Mu Yu was on was in the koan position of the 8 trigrams. The koan position was made up of 6 lines, and the middle was empty. Mu Yu was standing on the first stairway to heaven on the left. However, the second stairway to heaven above him didn't belong to the koan position, but to the zhen position next to it. It was just that every stairway to heaven had different heights, so they would cross each other from time to time, confusing people's judgment. He carefully observed the stairway to heaven that had different heights, and carefully compared it with the 8 trigrams. He remembered that other than the 3 stairways to heaven in the Qian position, the other positions of the 8 trigrams had more or less a break. For example, the Koan position had 3 breaks, the Zhen, Kan, and Zhen positions had 2 breaks, the Li, Dui, and Sun positions had only 1 break, and the Qian position didn't have a single break. In that case, this should be how to climb the stairway to heaven. A ray of light flashed through Mu Yu's mind, and he suddenly understood how to climb the stairway to heaven. Everyone's ability was suppressed here, and it was completely impossible to climb to the other stairway to heaven. The only way was to use these breaks. Therefore, the way to go up wasn't the so-called stairway to heaven, but through the breaks. However, this required a very strong deduction ability, and he had to constantly remember how the stairway to heaven had evolved. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would miss a step and fall. He didn't know if he would fall to his death, but he definitely wouldn't be able to reach the array hall. In the past, Deadwood Daddy liked to force Mu Yu to learn the rules of the 8 trigrams, so he was much more familiar with the deduction method of the 8 trigrams than ordinary people, and he could even calculate it in his mind. In this situation, it was undoubtedly a great help to him. Mu Yu deduced the 8 trigrams in his mind, and then he saw the right opportunity and took a step into the void on the right. This time, he didn't step on empty air. Instead, he stepped on something solid. He only felt a flash in front of his eyes, and his surroundings seemed to have changed. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing on another step of the stairway to heaven. He looked down, and there was a stairway to heaven below him. That was the stairway to heaven he was standing on just now. He found the way to climb the stairway to heaven so quickly? Zhuge Shaoxing was a little surprised. He remembered that when he had just entered the sect and climbed the stairway to heaven for the first time, it took him no less than a quarter of an hour to figure out the way up. However, Mu Yu's deciphering speed was far faster than his. I told you he was a genius. Master Lu couldn't help but sigh. At that time, he had spent 4 hours to find the way to climb the stairway to heaven. Maybe it was just a blind cat running into a dead mouse. He wasn't so lucky later on, Situ Yangtian said sarcastically. He still looked down on Mu Yu's cultivation during the Jindan period. Master Lu was unhappy and said, Situ Yangtian, I remember you spent 4 hours and a quarter of an hour to figure it out. If you're jealous of his talent, just say it. The stairway to heaven's position is constantly changing. If he doesn't know how to deduce it in his mind, he will miss a step on the second step. At that time, it won't look good if he falls with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Climbing the stairway to heaven is like walking through a maze. There are thousands of paths to choose, but 9 out of 10 are dead ends. Although I spent 4 hours, I only took 15 steps to reach it. Lu Dei, how many steps did you take? Situ Yangtian sneered. He and Master Lu had always disliked each other, so he didn't like the people that Master Lu liked. Lu Dei was furious. The number of steps taken would be different if one chose a different path. At that time, he had taken 17 steps to reach it. Although the overall speed of climbing the stairway to heaven was faster than Situ Yangtian, the path he chose was not as convenient as Situ Yangtian's. When climbing the stairway to heaven, if one chose a path with fewer steps, it meant that one's comprehension of formations was stronger. The stairway to heaven itself was constantly changing. With every step, the trajectory of the stairway to heaven would change again. There were a total of 36 sections of the stairway to heaven, which meant that there were 36 heights. However, everyone went up differently. If you chose the right time, you could even jump over several sections of the stairway to heaven in succession and reach the formation hall with the least number of steps. So what? Feng Mu only took the first step. Master Lu humphed. What? You still expect Feng Mu to reach it in 12 steps like senior brother sect master? Situ Yangtian sneered. Even if it's not 12 steps, it might be 15 steps. Don't be so smug. Master Lu said angrily. Although he said that, Master Lu needed to take 17 steps every time he ascended the stairway to heaven. This was something that he couldn't do. He couldn't do what Zhuge Shaoxing did with 12 steps. Mu Yu only climbed the 4th section of the stairway to heaven on his 2nd step. There were still 32 sections of the stairway to heaven above his head. According to this method of climbing the stairway to heaven, it would be a bit difficult to reach 12 steps. Damn it, I have to take 1 step at a time and calculate every step. How tiring! Mu Yu grumbled. He arrived at the lowest end of the stairway to heaven. The trajectory of the stairway to heaven around him quickly changed, messing up the path that he had originally deduced. No, the arrangement of the spirit chi here is very strange. The trajectory of these stairway to heaven isn't completely messed up. It's a 1-to-1 exchange. Little Shuai stuck his head out and said, 1-to-1 exchange? After being reminded by Little Shuai, Mu Yu looked carefully and instantly understood. The so-called 1-to-1 exchange meant that the trajectory of the stairway to heaven with odd numbers and the trajectory of the stairway to heaven with even numbers were exchanged. For example, Mu Yu knew that the 3rd section of the stairway to heaven swayed left and right, while the 4th section was invisible. When he took the 1st step, the 3rd section of the stairway to heaven became invisible, while the 4th section of the stairway to heaven swayed left and right. 1-to-1 exchange, 1-to-1 exchange. Mu Yu muttered, but in his heart, he was quickly calculating how many steps he would need to take to ascend the stairway to heaven. When he took the 2nd step, he came to the 4th section of the stairway to heaven. There were still 32 sections of the stairway to heaven. If he followed this method of ascending the stairway to heaven, he felt that he would need to take at least 16 more steps to reach the array hall. 16 steps is too long. In addition, I need to wait for the stairway to heaven to reach the right position in the middle. It will take at least 2 hours. Damn it! I have to wait for 2 hours just to meet them. What a pain in the ass. Let me think. Mu Yu once again calculated all the movements of the stairway to heaven. The 36 sections of the stairway to heaven around the array hall were completely reflected in his mind. He calculated the changes that would occur with every step. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration because he found a shortcut. Mu Yu did not continue to climb the stairway to heaven. Instead, he directly jumped down from the 2nd section of the stairway to heaven. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you still going down? Master Lu suddenly stood up. He really wanted to walk over and question him loudly. Instead of climbing the stairway to heaven, he actually went down. What the hell was this? Humph. This is your so-called genius disciple who surpassed Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai? There's still someone who goes down the stairway to heaven? How stupid must he be? Situ Yangtian laughed disdainfully. However, Zhuge Xiaoxing's body suddenly froze. He was extremely surprised. This isn't, what's wrong? The others did not quite understand. They had never seen such a situation before. They also did not understand what the sect master was surprised about. Chapter 431. When Mu Yu jumped to the 2nd section of the stairway, he found that he didn't suffer much impact. The stairway had a strange force that allowed him to land safely without too much pressure. The 19 Xiantian array masters in the array hall were all staring at Mu Yu. There was obvious disappointment in their eyes, because no one would jump down the stairway to heaven when they were ascending it. However, under the guidance of Deadwood Daddy, Mu Yu's understanding of gossip had long reached a very heaven-defying level. In the past, he thought that understanding gossip was very useless, but he didn't expect it to come in handy today. 1, 2, 3. Mu Yu counted silently. After waiting for 3 breaths, he stepped to the right without hesitation. In a flash, he arrived at the 13th section of the stairway. What? How can you ascend to the sky like this? Master Lu was stunned. Jumping from the 4th section to the 2nd section of the stairway could actually jump directly to the 13th section of the stairway? This method of climbing the stairway was completely beyond his imagination. He had never thought that he would need to jump down after climbing a level. The stairway operates without any pattern. How did he know that he had to wait for 3 breaths? Situ Yangtian was also stunned. However, Mu Yu's next move was once again beyond their imagination. He actually jumped down again. After jumping to the 5th section of the stairway, he stepped to the left without hesitation as soon as he stood firm. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the 20th section of the stairway. How can this be? All the Khanate array masters were stunned. If not for everyone present, they would have thought that there was a problem with the stairway. However, this was impossible because the array hall was the entire foundation of the array sect. It was impossible for there to be a problem. However, Mu Yu had really rewritten their understanding of the way to ascend to the sky. No one had ever jumped back after climbing a section of the stairway. Everyone was trying to climb up. After all, the array hall was at a high place. Climbing up the stairway was the right path. However, Mu Yu actually took a different path and jumped down a step. She even succeeded in climbing the stairway to heaven that was even higher than before. This was completely beyond everyone's imagination. Master Lu had walked up the stairway at least a few hundred times, so he was very clear about the following route. He helped Mu Yu calculate a little and his body suddenly trembled. He said in astonishment, "In this way, if we continue to walk up from the 20th section of the stairway, we will be able to reach the formation hall in about 8 steps. A total of 13 steps. Oh my God, 13 steps?" The sect leader of the array faction, Zhuge Shaoxing, had once taken the shortest amount of time to climb the stairway to heaven. It was also the shortest amount of steps, which was only 12 steps. This was already extremely rare. It was Mu Yu's first time walking, but he was able to take 13 steps, which was almost as many steps as Zhuge Shaoxing. It was truly inconceivable. This kid is indeed extraordinary. Zhuge Shaoxing stroked his white beard and nodded approvingly. Although according to Mu Yu's method, using 13 steps would not surpass him, but one had to know that Mu Yu was still a Zhongtian disciple. Using 13 steps was already enough to surpass many of the Xiantian array masters present. Usually, when people came to the formation hall, they did not go through the stairway to heaven. The stairway to heaven was only a test, it was not used to stop others. However, every Xiantian array master did not only walk the stairway to heaven once. Many Xiantian array masters would often use the stairway to heaven to comprehend the Tao of arrays. This was because climbing the stairway to heaven could deepen one's understanding of the 8 trigrams. There were countless ways to climb the stairway to heaven. If one could successfully climb the stairway to heaven, then one's understanding of the Tao of arrays would be even deeper. For example, the sect leader of the array faction, Zhuge Shaoxing, had tried to climb the stairway to heaven no less than 100 times. The fastest time he took was an hour, using 11 steps. He had already broken his own best record. This was something that no one else knew. Master Lu also often came here to climb the stairway to heaven. To comprehend the 8 trigrams Tao of arrays, he took 45 minutes, using 15 steps. This was already a very good achievement. At least, it was many times faster than the first time. It's a pity that his cultivation is a little low. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, his cultivation talent is a little lacking. Zhuge Shaoxing shook his head and said regretfully, "He will catch up sooner or later. I will definitely supervise him on this point. It's only 13 steps." His understanding of the Tao of arrays has really surpassed mine. Master Lu sighed, but he was very happy in his heart. An outstanding junior had appeared in the array faction, and the student had surpassed the master. This was naturally a good thing. 13 steps, when will I be able to reach it? Immortal Master Xia sighed softly. Mu Yu had never been a person who followed the prescribed order. He always liked to take unusual paths, and preferred to take shortcut. His method of ascending the heavens was not to go up step by step, but to move forward in a roundabout way. It seemed inconceivable, but it was easier than everyone else. According to everyone's thoughts, Mu Yu had already taken 5 steps. As long as he took 8 simple steps, he would be able to make people look at him with a whole new level of respect for his achievement of 13 steps. But Mu Yu jumped down again. Is he crazy? Everyone in the array hall frowned when they saw Mu Yu's actions. If he chose to jump down again, it would obviously be a waste of time. Why would he take this path? Kid, what are you doing? Did you give up on the good result of 13 steps? Master Lu became anxious again. 13 steps was already heaven-defying, but Mu Yu did not continue to walk up as they expected. Instead, he jumped down. Mu Yu had already jumped from the 20th step to the 11th step. At this time, he did not immediately leave. Instead, he sat down cross-legged. He sat there for 15 minutes. Everyone was anxious. What was wrong with this kid? He could have used 13 steps to ascend the heavens. Why did he give up halfway? This kid is jumping around. It seems he's gone crazy. We still overestimated him. Don't you think so, senior brother Lu Dai? Situ Yangtian coldly snorted. Master Lu was angered by Situ Yangtian's sarcasm. Unfortunately, Mu Yu did not play according to the routine. Originally, he could have surpassed him by ascending the heavens, but he gave up again. This made him so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. But after 15 minutes, Mu Yu suddenly stood up. He saw the opportunity of the stairway moving and took another step. This step allowed him to directly step from the 11th step to the 35th step. How was this possible? Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. By the time they recovered, Mu Yu had already taken another step. This time, he did not appear on the stairway. Instead, he stepped directly into the magnificent array hall. Mu Yu felt relieved. Just as he was about to shout, F***CK, I finally walked out of the ghost stairway. He found 19 terrifying auras enveloping him, causing him to feel great pressure again. Fortunately, he did not say that sentence out loud. Junior Feng Mu greets all the masters. Mu Yu felt uncomfortable being stared at by 19 gazes. He did not understand why these people were looking at him strangely. After a while, he found that no one responded to him, so he raised his head in confusion. What Mu Yu did not know was that everyone was shocked by his method of ascending the stairway. Zhuge Shaoxing was the first to recover. He seemed to have thought of something, and his heart was already surging. He coughed twice, trying to calm his shocked mood, and said, "You are culmination disciple Feng Mu?" Replying to headmaster, Junior is indeed culmination disciple Feng Mu. Mu Yu said modestly. He had never seen the headmaster of the array division, Zhuge Shaoxing, before, but looking at Zhuge Shaoxing's seat and the unfathomable aura around him, he knew the other's identity. Master Lu suddenly stood up and asked in disbelief, "You just took 8 steps and an hour to climb the stairway to heaven?" Mu Yu looked at Master Lu's expression and thought that Master Lu was not satisfied with the time he took, so he said sincerely, replying to Master, "This is Junior's first time climbing this stairway. Because it is too complicated and mysterious, I took a bit more time and probably took a few more steps. I have made all the masters wait for a long time, please forgive me." Long time? Long time, your sister. Everyone looked at each other, and they all had the heart to kill themselves. A junior not only used a new method to break the record, but also did not know what he did. Did this guy think that everyone was dissatisfied with him because they had waited for too long? He was really thinking too much. Ascending the heavens with 8 steps in an hour, this was already an existence that surpassed the sect master of the array division, Zhuge Shaosheng. Gulp. Master Lu swallowed a mouthful of saliva, still unable to recover from the shock. 8 steps. He only took 8 steps, which was even less than the number of steps taken by the sect master, and the time was the same. This incredible method of ascending the heavens had completely refreshed everyone's perception. No one would have thought that one could actually jump up and down the heavens stairway. Most people would think of climbing the heavens stairway directly. How did you think of going down in a roundabout way? After a long time, Zhuge Shaosheng asked for everyone's doubts. Mu Yu replied honestly. At first, this disciple thought that the changes of the heavens stairway were irregular, but later I discovered that I was wrong. The changes of the heavens stairway are actually regular. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Situ Yangtian. That's impossible. The trajectory of the heavens stairway is irregular. This is known to all. Mu Yu frowned. He could clearly feel that Situ Yangtian didn't seem to like him very much. This guy had a sour face to everyone, but Mu Yu didn't provoke him, so why was he so irritable? Mu Yu still said very politely, Master, I'm talking about the changes of the heavens stairway, not the trajectory of the heavens stairway. What's the difference? Situ Yangtian asked subconsciously. Not only him, but everyone else also didn't understand what Mu Yu was talking about. Weren't the changes of the heavens stairway and the trajectory of the heavens stairway the same principle? The difference is very big. The trajectory of the heavens stairway refers to the activity of each step of the heavens stairway, while the changes of the heavens stairway refer to how all the movements of the heavens stairway change after we climb a step, Mu Yu explained. With Mu Yu's explanation, everyone was even more confused. They didn't understand what Mu Yu was talking about. Explain it in more detail, Zhuge Shaosheng said. Mu Yu briefly explained the rule of the single and double exchange. Each step of the heavens stairway moved independently without any pattern, so no one could see the rule from the whole thing. However, their rules were reflected on the basis of mutual exchange. That was, the trajectories of the first and second steps of the heavens stairway would be exchanged, the third and fourth steps would be exchanged, and so on. He used this rule to change the way he ascended the heavens stairway, thus achieving the terrifying 8 steps to heaven. When many people stepped on the second step of the heavens stairway, they found that the movement of the heavens stairway they originally saw had changed. It was immediately chaotic. They didn't find a rule to follow like Mu Yu did. Chapter 432. So that's how it is. After Mu Yu explained it for the 3rd time, Zhuge Shaosheng finally nodded thoughtfully. He had the deepest understanding of the Array Palace's stairway to heaven, but even after studying it for so many years, he had never discovered this method of climbing the stairway to heaven. However, Mu Yu's words made him suddenly enlightened. Zhuge Shaosheng realized that he had actually thought of a more profound formation method and even wanted to leave to practice it. Well, fortunately, there were still people who understood. Unorthodox methods aren't worth mentioning. Situ Yangtian listened in a daze, still unable to understand what Mu Yu was talking about. He insisted that Mu Yu had relied on luck to climb up. F***ck. How did I offend this old man? Mu Yu was baffled by this. Master Lu could not accept it. Although he did not understand what Mu Yu was talking about, Mu Yu had done what they could not do after all. Moreover, Mu Yu was a good seedling that he had discovered. He immediately retorted, Situ Yangtian, Feng Mu discovered a deeper level of the stairway to heaven on his first try. You're not as skilled as him, yet you belittle him. Is this how you act as an elder? Formation methods also have requirements for cultivation. If one has a unique talent for formations but no cultivation, he's just a vase. Situ Yangtian said bluntly. Alright, no matter what method he used, Feng Mu did climb the stairway to heaven in the shortest time and the least number of steps under our watch. There's no doubt about this. As for his cultivation, junior brother Lu will personally guide him. Feng Mu, is it true that Talisman Grandmaster tried to assassinate you this time? Zhuge Shaoxing asked. Yes, this disciple escaped from Mo Ziming's hands. When Mu Yu said this, she felt a little helpless. It was clearly Mo Ziming who had escaped from her hands after a great calamity. Zhuge Shaoxing snorted. His tone was mixed with inviolable dignity and anger. He said, Talisman Grandmaster's actions have become more and more rampant recently. If it weren't for the fact that we need to maintain our existing business everywhere, we definitely would not have let him off. This debt will be settled during the talisman competition. Mu Yu was still hesitating whether or not he should tell Zhuge Shaoxing that there was a spy in the Array faction. However, when he saw Situ Yangtian's attitude towards him, he decided against it. Right now, he didn't have any evidence. His empty words were equivalent to framing so many people. It would be better for him to wait until he had gathered enough evidence before informing the Array faction. That way, he wouldn't appear too arrogant. Zhuge Shaoxing then asked Mu Yu about other knowledge about formations. Mu Yu answered smoothly, which really made most of the previous masters have a whole new level of respect for him. They finally understood what kind of talent Master Lu had discovered. You said you've only been here for 2 months? You've only entered the sect for 2 months, yet you already know so much about formations. Could it be that you're a spy sent by the Talisman sect? Situ Yangtian suddenly interjected. F***ck. Mu Yu wanted to curse out loud when he heard this. King worked so hard to help you find a spy. How did I become a spy instead? Replying to Master, this disciple has loved studying formations since I was a child. I learned the way of formations from my father since I was a child. After my father passed away, I wanted to learn more about formations, so I joined the Array faction. I'm not a spy. Mu Yu suppressed his anger and said calmly. Master Lu directly scolded. Situ Yangtian, was your head kicked by a donkey? Why would the Talisman sect send such a talent as a spy? It's not easy for a genius disciple to appear in our Array faction. Why does it sound like you don't want to see the Array faction rise? I just don't want someone to be confused and blinded. I'll investigate your identity, Situ Yangtian said coldly to Mu Yu. Mu Yu touched his nose. Fortunately, he had already made preparations before revealing his talent, so he didn't panic at this moment. Alright, junior brother Situ. I hope you won't casually say these groundless guesses in the future. I don't want to hear any empty words. We'll know whether Feng Mu's words are true or not. Our Array faction has been suppressed by the Talisman sect for so many years. It's time for someone to stand up and teach the Talisman sect a lesson. Zhuge Shaoxing's voice wasn't loud, but it was sonorous and powerful. Yes, sect master. Situ Yangtian didn't speak anymore. He just looked at Mu Yu gloomily. No one knew what he was thinking. Mu Yu was very glad that he didn't say anything about being a spy. Otherwise, he would really end up in a thankless situation. Afterward, Master Lu took him directly out of the Array hall. There was no need to go through the stairway to heaven at all. Not long after leaving the Array hall, Master Lu smiled and couldn't wait to praise Mu Yu. Feng Mu, you've really made me proud today. Haha. Do you know that the way you climbed the stairway to heaven not only surprised everyone, but also successfully broke the sect master's record? As long as I sculpt you well, I guarantee that I'll be able to cultivate you into a qualified master. Master Lu looked at Mu Yu with satisfaction, as if he was looking at a perfect piece of art. At first, Mu Yu thought that he had spent too much time. He didn't expect that he had unknowingly broken the record. Now, he couldn't keep a low profile even if he wanted to. The way he jumped up and down to ascend to the heavens was indeed a different way. At that time, under Xiao Shuai's reminder, he had calculated the changes of the entire stairway clearly. It was also this powerful deduction ability that allowed him to discover a unique way to ascend to the heavens. As long as you don't give me a second-hand innate array foundation again, Mu Yu muttered in his heart. There was a forbidden forest in the array faction. Usually, no disciple dared to go near it. It was said that this was the cultivation place of the array faction's founder, Array Tiandao, and no one was allowed to casually disturb him. Normally, only the sect master of the array faction, Zhuge Shaoxing, could enter the forbidden forest of the array faction. Of course, if there were some disciples who had contributed greatly to the array faction, they would also have the opportunity to enter. After entering the forbidden forest, one would receive personal guidance from Array Tiandao. Their understanding of Array Dao would improve by leaps and bounds. This was something that all disciples of the Array faction dreamed of. In front of the forbidden forest, Zhuge Shaoxing walked to the front of a tree and said respectfully, "Disciple Zhuge Shaoxing requests an audience with the founder." After a while, a formation pattern appeared outside the forbidden forest. Then, everything returned to normal. "Thank you, founder." Zhuge Shaoxing stepped in. He didn't enter the forbidden forest, but his entire person had already merged into the void. The forbidden forest was still lush and full of life, as if nothing had happened. Zhuge Shaoxing reappeared in a bleak forest. The leaves here were yellow and fluttering in the wind. A middle-aged man without a white beard was sitting in the meditative pose under a tree. Leaves sprinkled all over his head and shoulders, but he didn't seem to notice anything. His aura was restrained, making him look like an ordinary person. However, his temperament made him stand out from the masses. Disciple greets the founder. Zhuge Shaoxing kneeled with a respectful expression. This middle-aged man was the renowned founder of the Array faction, Array Tiandao. Array Tiandao's eyes were closed and he didn't even look at Zhuge Shaoxing. Zhuge Shaoxing didn't show any dissatisfaction. He quietly lay on the ground and didn't stand up. After a long time, Array Tiandao slowly spoke. "Rise, what is it?" Zhuge Shaoxing finally stood up and said, "Founder, someone climbed the heavenly stairway with 8 steps in only an hour." 8 steps. Array Tiandao suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as deep as the starry sky as he stared straight at Zhuge Shaoxing. Zhuge Shaoxing was startled, feeling that his every action was being seen through by the founder. He didn't dare to breathe too loudly. "Founder, this person's name is Feng Mu, a culmination disciple. Just like Patriarch, he only used 8 steps to ascend the stairway." Zhuge Shaoxing sighed. Everyone in the Array faction knew that Zhuge Shaoxing used 12 steps, but they didn't know that Array Tiandao used 8 steps just like Mu Yu. Unfortunately, Array Tiandao never told others how to do this. He said that one had to rely on themselves to gain a deeper understanding of the Tao of formations. Because of this, Zhuge Shaoxing had always tried his best to shorten the number of steps to 10, but after so many years, he had only reached the limit of 11 steps. Who would have thought that a young Zhongtian disciple would actually use 8 steps to reach the heavenly Array Tao? Culmination disciple? Isn't he a connate disciple? Array Tiandao's calm face revealed a hint of surprise. He has passed the test of 2 formation tablets and is already considered a quasi-connate disciple. Once he breaks the 3rd formation tablet, he will become a connate disciple, Zhuge Shaoxing said. A culmination disciple has such shocking talent? The starlight in Array Tiandao's eyes changed again. He suddenly asked, "Is he the culmination disciple who just joined the sect 2 months ago?" "Yes, he just joined the sect 2 months ago. Do you know him?" Zhuge Shaoxing was curious. A culmination disciple who passed the 8th hexagram. How could I not know him? Array Tiandao's eyes were still unfathomable. No one knew what he was thinking. Array Tiandao usually didn't care about the matters of the Array faction. He would only be disturbed at certain times. For example, when Mu Yu chose to die in order to pass the 8th hexagram. What? He passed the 8th hexagram? How come I didn't know about this? Zhuge Xiaoxing's face was full of shock. He thought Array Tiandao was joking. I'm the only one who knows about this. I'm afraid the 2 postnatal disciples who were on duty that day also know about this. Looks like they didn't tell anyone about this. Array Tiandao nodded deeply, not surprised. The 8 trigrams of the Array Gate were used to test the talent of new disciples. Those who passed the 3rd gate would become a postnatal disciple. Those who passed the 4th and 5th trigrams would become a culmination disciple. Those who passed the 6th, 7th, and 8th trigrams would become a connate disciple. The higher the gate, the harder it was to pass. Zhuge Xiaoxing only passed the 7th hexagram. Even the only connate disciple left, Mu Chenghong, only passed the 7th hexagram. The only person who had managed to break through the 8 trigrams was Array Heavenly Dao. If Feng Mu passed the 8th hexagram, why is he a culmination disciple? After a long while, Zhuge Xiaoxing asked in disbelief. Usually, connate Array masters like them wouldn't be disturbed unless there was a connate disciple. After all, there were hundreds of culmination disciples. They weren't as important as connate disciples. It would be too troublesome to ask them one by one. He chose to die in order to pass the hexagram. He passed the 4th hexagram as the 8th hexagram. Then, he stopped. It seems like he didn't want to go through the pain. He didn't even know he passed the 8th hexagram. Array Tiandao knew what the 8th hexagram meant. He also understood why Mu Yu didn't continue after passing the 8th hexagram. It was because the 8th hexagram's test was too harsh. It consumed a lot of energy. Was he trying to pass the 8th hexagram in the face of death? Taking 8 steps to climb the stairway. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.